Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Let me get this straight. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I hope you guys are doing all right this morning. A bit of a technical glitch. StreamYard is doing too much. I'm just going to say that. StreamYard is doing too much. I often tell you that I feel like I'm always on opposite ends of whatever takes place in my life. That whether I am the victor or the loser, almost relevant to the point, at some point I'll be on the other end of the exact same or very similar situation. I used to be a software engineer, and we used to build systems like StreamYard. That was my job. Sometimes they would send us to companies in order to build those systems out. Sometimes we would build those systems in-house. But either way, invariably, there are bugs. And the people who take the bad end of those bugs as engineers were like, dude, man, why y'all complaining? We'll get it straight. Yeah, okay. I'm seeing how that feels on the other end right now. I am feeling the pain of the person who's using software as opposed to the person who's building software. But I see my guest in the background. She's primming herself. There you go. Vanesssa Beeley.
At least I can hear you this time.
Yes.
I'm
How
good.
you doing?
I'm good.
Right?
I'll just lower the camera a bit. I'm good. I'm fine, thank you. There's quite a big storm going on here, so I was slightly worried when I couldn't get on that was, I don't know, interfering somehow.
No, that was a
you never
technical
know
glitch.
In Lebanon.
Well, StreamYard. So I tried to build one StreamYard thing. It built two instead. It gave an error that it shouldn't have gave. And so when I got rid of one, the other one was sending people to the wrong location. And so I had to reset I had to reset the system. I used to build software, as I used to talk about other ends. I was a software engineer for 3 years. And we used to build stuff like this. And so, I'm feeling how it is to be on the other end of how this stuff works.
Yeah, I'm hopeless at all of this. So I was just panicking, thinking, oh God, it's the Wi-Fi here. So
when you were like, let me restart my computer, I was like, no, don't do it. Don't restart your computer. Your computer is fine. But for the audience, Vanesssa Beeley, international investigative journalist. You can follow her work. Well, it's still on Twitter, at Vanesssa Beeley.
Yeah.
And you can read her articles. Where can they read your articles now? This may be old.
No. Substack is the main one. And I do quite a lot of work with ukcolumn.org in the UK. But everything gets republished up at my Substack anyway, so I guess everything ends up there.
Okay, Vanesssa Beeley Substack. Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Vanesssa, I am so glad. Oh, by the way, also patreon.com/Vanesssa Beeley. That's still legit. Oh, something happened.
I'm losing connection a little bit.
Oh, you're okay.
Is it my connection or your connection?
Mine is rock solid. It may be the storm, but it's okay.
Oh, okay. It might be mine. It might be the storm. Okay, you were dipping in and out a bit. Sorry.
Oh, no. Okay. Vanesssa Beeley, patreon.com is still the same.
Yeah. And Telegram, YouTube, everything under Vanesssa Beeley keeps it simple.
Okay. What is the condition on the ground there? I know that there were several attacks by Israel. I think this was last week. I don't know. I haven't seen anything recent. The shutdown has taken most of the news in the United States. So a lot of things is...
I mean, how to describe how things are here following the welcome given to Al-Qaeda at the White House, and the very clear indication that Giuliani was going to be President Ahmed al-Sharaa, for those that don't know him as Abu Muhammad al-Giuliani, formerly with ISIS in Iraq, and then of course he co-founded Nusra Front in Syria, which is effectively Al-Qaeda in Syria, and that hasn't changed despite all of the rebranding and remodeling of his image by MI6 and CIA. So basically how I'm relating that to Lebanon right now is that he's been absorbed into the so-called anti-ISIS coalition, which is sort of a double psyop because, of course, the US is behind the creation of ISIS anyway. They control the ISIS elements both in Iraq and inside Syria. Probably 30 to 40% of Jolani's Takfiri forces either are, proudly ISIS in that they wear the ISIS insignia on their uniforms, or there are many of his HTS forces, particularly the foreign Takfiris, defecting to ISIS because they perceive that Jolani is drifting away very rapidly from his Takfiri origins and from the idea of creating a caliphate in Syria and in the region generally. So ISIS is actually on a pretty good recruitment drive at the moment.
Really?
The fact that Jolani is, the fact that Jolani is being brought in by Trump to allegedly fight ISIS, I say allegedly very, very sort of pointedly there, because that's literally a form of cannibalization for Jolani with regards to the forces that are, as I said, comprise probably the majority of the Takfiri that have been conducting the massacres in the coastal areas and also resettling in the homes of the coastal area communities that were effectively ethnically cleansed. So he's been resettling these foreign extremists into the coastal areas, into areas in Damascus, in Homs and Hama. So for me, things here have been, they've continued as normal. There are rumors now that after the failure, basically, of the Trump administration and Tom Barrack, his economic hitman, to persuade the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah and and the resistance factions, or to use the army against their own people in Hezbollah and the resistance factions across Lebanon, because Hezbollah has support outside the Shia community, of course, also within the Christian communities, the Sunni communities, and so on, as it does within the army itself. You'll often find, and I'm sure Laith has explained this, you'll often find a brother in one family in the army and another brother in Hezbollah, for example. And so for me, what is now happening, Israel is ramping up, as Tom Barrack said that he would tell them to do if the Lebanese government wouldn't pull its finger out, basically, and disarm Hezbollah, then the doors would be open to Israel to come in and do the job on behalf of Washington and Saudi Arabia and the Zionist bloc. And that effectively is what is now happening, is that Israel is ramping up the aggression in the south. It's carried out a number of bombings over the last few days. And now we see Tony Blair, the famous Tony Blair, who's also sort of been dredged up to deal with the Gaza file, is now allegedly, according to a report in Al-Akhbar, he's in Lebanese media, he's also going to come into Lebanon to try and pick up the pieces of what Tom Barrack couldn't succeed in doing. And of course, the ultimate plan is to create this so-called buffer zone to provide security for Israel in the south, which again, of course, means land grab, displacement of people from southern Lebanon, and this creation of what is euphemistically called a free trade zone, which of course means a complete colonization of that area and takeover of that area, which also, of course, runs in parallel with the plan to do that to Gaza, to create a free trade zone in Gaza, which will be a component of the India-Middle East economic corridor. That was always the plan. And all, even Trump's latest so-called peace scam incorporates elements of that original plan to effectively turn Gaza into this central free trade zone, using Gazan gas reserves, of course, Palestinian gas reserves, turning Gaza into a series of smaller concentration camps, which is effectively what they're heading towards now, where they can, the Palestinians that want to remain, that agree to be completely de-radicalized and to abandon any dreams of statehood, can remain as slave labor, effectively, for the industrial zone that would be created by the Zionist bloc, which includes Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Even, God, man, our politics is so screwed up.
Yeah, it is. Really, it really is, actually.
Well, what I mean by that is you get Al-Shara, who gives this message of we're going to create an Islamic caliphate. You get Donald Trump, who comes in and says we're going to make America great again. You get rando political leader in a rando country saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And even ISIS gets fooled by Al-Shara or Al-Jalani, whatever you want to call him, where they're like, hey, this guy doesn't seem like he wants to create a caliphate. He's hanging out with Trump in the White House. Like, meaning even ISIS is fooled. Like, even they, it's bad. I know I'm focusing on this because I'm wowed out by this a little bit. Like,
I mean, it is insane. But I think if you listen to Marco Rubio's messaging today, for example, and he talks about, what was agreed in the meeting with Trump. And at the end of it, I think the truth comes out, because he basically talks about Jolani being absorbed into this anti-ISIS coalition. But then he says, because if we don't do this, then Syria will descend into civil war, and that will open the doors. It will provide the vacuum that will allow Iran and Hezbollah and the resistance factions back in to influence the Syrian landscape. So that's where they're going with this, right?
But it sounds like. I'm sorry, please continue. I'm sorry.
No, go on. No. I
was going to say, but it sounds like it's going to descend into civil war anyway. I mean, yes. I get the sense that if ISIS is on a recruitment drive, and if Al-Jalani is, every time you see him, he's either siding with the U.S., either allows Israel to take more territory, either, like every time you see him, he's doing something less ISIS-like, short of allowing his dogs to murder ethnic Syrians.
Exactly.
Like, I guess what I'm getting at is, if they're on a recruitment drive, aren't they going to at some point target him or the government of Syria, quote unquote?
Yes, there is potential for that. The thing is, I think what they seem to be driving Syria towards is, to a degree, a copy of Lebanon. After the Taif Agreement in 1989, after the Lebanese Civil War, Lebanon devolved into effectively sectarian governance, which paralyzed all kind of political forward movement, let's say, because sects have to be equally represented in government in Lebanon, which kind of means, well, then you don't go anywhere, right? No political decisions are made to a huge degree. And everyone kind of, when there is an issue, everyone gathers behind their sect rather than behind the national identity or behind the country or behind the state. And that's very much where they're pushing Syria towards. And of course, if you go back to the CIA penned clean break doctrine back in 1996, 1997, which was commissioned by Netanyahu back then, of course, what does it talk about? It talks about the Middle East being divided into these sectarian statelets, which will make it much easier for Israel to gain a foothold and for Israel to appear the sympathetic player in the region, because there isn't unity. What is the most threatening for them is unity between the resistance. So what happened in Palestine? Palestine are predominantly Sunni Muslim, right? But they're being defended by what is predominantly Shia Muslim resistance actors or states, right? And this is what is anathema to the Zionist bloc, is to see any kind of unity, in the same way why the West disrupted pan-Arabist movements back during the creation of the parasite state of Israel, right? That if you look at where Israel was created, in Palestine, so it divided Syria and Egypt, which at the time, of course, was the Syrian Arab Republic, and was heading, just like Gaddafi was in Libya, towards a pan-Arabist movement that would have united the countries of the Arab world given them sovereignty over their land and resources. You know, America was never going to accept that, just as it doesn't accept it in any area in the African continent or in the Latin American continent, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Where do you think that's going to go? I mean, is al-Jilani going to be able to keep his dogs in line? Or is this going to break into, is it going to fracture? If you had to give your best guess, what do you fall on that?
I think I have actually written about this. I think ultimately, of course, it's going to fracture. I think if we look at the actual results of the meeting with Trump, they're minimal of benefit to Syria, and particularly not of benefit at all to Syrians, right? Why? Because the US and the majority of the international community still don't recognize Jilani and Jilani's regime on the international stage. It's not recognized as a government, right? So this is the hook that they're keeping Jilani dangling on while he's acting president. Effectively, he's given himself that role, and he's backed by all of the international intelligence agencies and media outlets, which are all part of the intelligence and security complex, the deep state of respective countries anyway. He effectively isn't, right? He's not elected by the Syrian people. The ridiculous elections that they had, I think it's something like 6,000 people in the whole country of 23 million were actually eligible to vote. And he elected the majority of the members of the various committees that then decide on the final government elect. Right. So it was a farce. After all these complaints about President Assad and being a dictatorship and so on, and then of course what's Jilani doing? But nothing he does can be deemed as wrong at the moment. But lifting the sanctions, for example, Trump hasn't lifted the sanctions. He's given them another waiver for 6 months. So what does this do? This means that the majority of foreign investments are not going to go through, because no one's going to invest long term in a country that is potentially still going to be under sanctions after 6 months, right? It keeps prices in the country static. It keeps the job market static because of lack of investment. It results in fire sale concessions, selling resources and infrastructure off at a very low value because investment isn't going to be coming in anytime soon, right? So it's stalling everything in effect, while giving Trump a kind of political win, you know, from the perspective of the Gulf states and those that were invested in regime change inside Syria. And then this idea that HTS should be involved in an anti-ISIS coalition. Well, this is effectively setting Jilani up for at least an internal war between his own Takfiri fighters, for sure. And he's running out of wriggle room as to how he can sell it. Because, as I said, he's already installed members of ISIS and foreign ISIS Takfiri in the government, in the Ministry of Defense, in the military. He's given them homes, he's given them citizenship. So what does he do now? He can't rescind the favors that he's given them for having supported him in Idlib for the years before he took power in December 2024. At the same time, of course, he's continuing to conduct, or his forces are continuing to conduct, ethnic cleansing, massacres, abductions, rapes, kidnappings. And the level of lawlessness inside Syria now is at a level that no one has in history ever seen before. There's common theft on the streets. People's houses are just being taken from them. There's no system. There's no law. I have people who in the beginning, because they had to a degree been suffering economically for the last 5 years of the President Assad government, were optimistic just because it was a change. Within 24, 48 hours, and I'm speaking to them now, they're saying to me, no, Vanesssa, you were right. This is like 100 times worse than what we had before. And how many times do we hear this? How many times do we hear, oh, we wish Saddam Hussein was back, or we wish Muammar Gaddafi was here. This is what happens. People in these countries get so infiltrated and so propagandized into believing the future is better with XYZ individual, right? And then, of course, what happens, the reality is no one is focusing on the actual final agenda, which is the partitioning of Syria, as I said, into these sectarian statelets under the control of power players, external power players. And the biggest one of that, of course, is Israel.
It's wild. When Syria was falling, or before it fell, people like me and other channels were deemed to be, quote, Assad apologists, Assad puppets, useful idiots. And we would make that very argument. It's like, dude, when when Saddam Hussein fell, and then 10 years on, it was like, hey, maybe it was better if Saddam Hussein stayed, as opposed to many people dying and what took place with Iraq. Same thing with Libya, right? And it's like
even Egypt.
Yeah, and my point of view is it has nothing to do with this idea of backing a particular political figure. It's that I know that the U.S. is dumping billions of dollars into overthrowing that country and is paying thick-necked animals to go and murder people. I know that, right? And you even had people warning, like Tulsi Gabbard would go on. I know she's, marred today, but for all intents and purposes at the time, she would go on CNN and say, Jake, we're supporting terrorists. And of course, the mainstream media was like, well, the government said they're not doing that. And it's like, okay, did Jake Tapper know that? Like, does Jake Tapper know that Jake Tapper is lying? And then immediately when Obama is out of office, articles come out, the U.S. is spending billions of dollars to overthrow the Syrian government. You have these weird situations where the U.S. military, or let's say terrorists backed by the U.S. military, are fighting terrorists backed by the CIA. And it doesn't click. People were still like, hey, Assad has to go. And then when Assad falls and the ethnic cleansing starts, they're like, oh my God, who could have foreseen that they were going to go and just murder people and all of these groups?
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because it's awful. But at the same time, it's just like, it's kind of repeat spin. It's just endless. And at what point do we go, oh, this has happened before somewhere?
It never clicks. It never clicks. I swear to God, it never clicks. Like, it's not like Saddam Hussein was 50 years ago, right? I mean, we're talking about something that's in recent memory. Libya wasn't 50 years ago. This was recent memory. I mean, that place is still, no, go ahead, please.
I can't hear you. No.
You can't hear me? Let's see.
I don't think it's me.
How about now? Can you hear me? You still can't hear me. You still can't hear me. Let's see. Audience, can you hear me? Audience. Let me know, audience. Can you hear me?
No, I've just tested mine. They're fine.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Nope.
Okay, the audience says they can hear me, and my mic and everything else is running correct. I think that may be yours. 1 second.
No,
1 second.
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Do you want me to sign out and back in again?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, should be right back. Technical glitch. We will overcome. We will overcome. Well, my volume is up. Yeah, and I can hear her just fine. But for whatever reason, she said she couldn't hear me. We're going to work that out. While I wait for her, I want to make a quick change to my camera. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we are. Sharp again. Yeah, she'll be back. Okay, let me bring her back in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. The audience can hear us both. I can hear you
fine.
just fine. I don't know what it was. It's okay.
Well, I don't
Now,
know.
I was just saying,
this problem.
well, I was just saying it's very frustrating. That's all. It's like this stuff is infinitely foreseeable. And I can't tell if the people who are acting shocked by this, if they were honest actors from the beginning, where they were just bewildered, or if they were just lying. And, there may be some people in media, maybe the Jake Tappers of the world, just lying. But you may have some real, honest to God, useful idiots out there who thought, this is democracy. And no, that's not democracy. It was never going to be democracy in that sense. It's unfortunate. That's all. What was Syria like before it fell? I've never had the opportunity to visit. And so I don't have a sense of what it was like before it fell and what it's like now that it has fallen, meaning the radical shift that has taken place in the lives of Syrians that couldn't leave and that have to be under Jelani's boot.
Yeah. Sadly, I never visited Syria before 2011 either. And, everyone told me that pre-2011, it was one of the most secure and stable countries in the Middle East or West Asia. So I'm kind of sad myself that I didn't go there before all this regime change war nonsense horrors started. I was there, so from 2016 until the final days, really. I was living there from 2019, so during the toughest economic sanctions that were introduced by Trump, of course, being the Caesar sanctions, which really were the final nail in the kind of ability of the state to keep the country together. And that, of course, was deliberate, to plunge Syria, having really lost the military regime change war. They then plunged it into one of the darkest economic free fall ages that we've ever seen, I think. And of course, while the US was occupying Syrian oil and resources in the northeast and in Idlib through Jelani and Al-Qaeda, because a lot of people don't know, but Jelani had his own processing company called Al-Watad that was actually processing the stolen oil from northeast Syria. He had a monopoly on this, yes. And he was then selling it back into Turkey. Turkey, of course, was also benefiting throughout the war from the oil in the northeast anyway, and much of it was going into Israel, being brokered by Erdogan's son. But yeah, Jelani and HTS, they had a monopoly on the processing. So the oil would come from the northeast to the northwest and be processed by Al-Watad. But what was always extraordinary for me, even on some of the most dangerous front lines, like in Aleppo in 2016, various other areas, eastern Ghouta and Damascus until it was fully liberated in 2018, and southern Idlib and Hama, which I think reached final sort of agreement and liberation in 2020, which was when, of course, Russia, Turkey, and Iran brokered the Idlib deal, which effectively for the next few years enabled the reinforcing of Jelani's troops and militia, the bringing in of weapons, etc., etc. So it incubated Jelani's militia for the following 5 years to the point where they were strong enough to advance on Damascus. But Syria itself, despite all of the hardships, was a wonderful place. People say no one could talk about anything. Well, I honestly have to say that was nonsense. It didn't matter whether it was one of the little kiosks on a street corner, the guy would talk to me about politics. No one would talk about anything except politics. No one would do anything except complain about not having bread, not having, they call it benzene, not having fuel for their cars, not having heating fuel, not having XYZ. Everyone spoke quite freely and quite often in a very critical way about the government. The red line to a large degree was the president. So you could criticize the government, not because anyone had imposed a red line, but because no one really wanted to go there. They would happily criticize the government, but very few would criticize the president. Having said that, just to give you a little anecdote, when I was in one of the Syrian Christian towns, Al-Skalbiya, in the northern Hama region, when they were still under attack from the terrorist groups, that were camped around them in Kalat Madik, which was only 500 meters away from Skelbia. You could actually see the Nusra Front mortar launchers from Skelbia. Yeah. There was an attack, and I was interviewing an elderly lady, very strong lady there, and she spent at least 5 minutes cursing the president. And at the end of this, it was wonderful, because this to me was surreal. Like, she cursed him for about 5 minutes because they'd just come under attack. Like, why don't we have water? Why don't we have electricity? What, everyone forgot about it. And then at the end of it, she said, "But God bless the president. God bless Syria." This was, it's very hard to explain this kind of patriarchal society. When the West bangs on about democracy, it's such an Orientalist view, because in this culture, it is a patriarchal culture, right? In a sense, it's better to have a benevolent dictator than to try and enforce democracy on people that actually need this central governance, this central figure that they can cuss and they can criticize and they can blame him for everything. But at the end of the day, they go back to him, Security was incredible. I could walk out at 2, 3 a.m. in the center of Damascus on my own, and no fear of anyone stealing something or attacking me or even hassling me. It was, it was an amazing place, despite all the hardships. No electricity, no water, very little food supply in the end, and so on. It was besieged, but the people were amazing. There was something about them that was just honestly really magical. And now, when it breaks my heart when I think about it now, and I speak to people that are still there and they can't leave. Even for, let's say, the Sunni Muslim population, which is the majority, those that are not complying with the Takfiri ideology, the extremists, sort of Wahhabi sectarian ideology, are also being hunted down. Right? I mean, I have people I know who I can't talk to at the moment because they're in hiding, because they're afraid, because of their rejection of Jolani, they're going to be hunted down and persecuted, right? There's people all the time trying to get out, not only Alawites in the coastal areas, but the whole country has just descended into a lawless vacuum where really these predators, which are the Takfiri thugs semi under the control of Jolani, are hunting people down under the pretext of regime remnants or we found weapons. And the problem is that there's no objective journalism being done now. The majority of journalists that are in there are the mainstream journalists that, of course, were kept out largely by the former government because they spent the entire war lying about the chemical weapons, about the prisons and so on, and completely misrepresenting the truth on the ground. For the majority, there were some very good exceptions. No, I mean, now it's just plunged into an atmosphere of fear and distrust. I think that's the saddest thing. Syrians always had a very strong trust among themselves, and now nobody trusts their neighbor because everyone's betraying each other to try and protect themselves. That's the environment that's being created.
Who controls Jolani?
That's a really good question. Which direction do you want him pulled in?
Well, that's what makes it interesting, right? That's why it's an interesting question to me. He is being pulled in so many different directions, and it seems like he's dancing just to stay afloat, right? Like, I need to make connections with the Russians. I need to make connections with the Israelis. I need to make connections with the Americans. I need to make connections with the Turks. And it's like, okay, dude, how many masters are you going to actually have, right? Who controls him?
I think I think this is a very interesting question. Funnily enough, I had this conversation with the ambassador for Venezuela this morning, and we actually agreed on it because obviously he was formerly in Syria. He's now ambassador of Syria and Lebanon. Although, because Maduro doesn't recognize Jolani's regime, he hasn't yet gone back to Damascus. I think basically what you have now, so you have an overarching US Washington influence. You have the British ensconced in Damascus, basically running the rebranding campaign for Jolani and his administration. We know that Tony Blair's former security advisor, now Keir Starmer's security advisor, Jonathan Powell, and his organization, I think he's now left that organization to go and work for Keir Starmer, intermediate, was running the rebranding campaign of Jolani from 2021 onwards. They were also heavily involved in basically presenting the Al-Qaeda groups and affiliates basically as political alternatives to President Assad. So they were whitewashing these groups for the period of the regime change war anyway. So operatives from that organization are actually ensconced in the palace in Damascus and are, as I said, coaching Jolani, Assad al-Shaibani in particular. We saw Shaibani having a meeting or an interview, sorry, with Tony Blair at Davos. So that's the British role, which of course to a large degree it always has been. In my opinion, British intelligence was running the operations in Syria throughout the regime change war, and even pre-regime change war. The entire idea was concocted between Tony Blair and George Bush post 9/11. But I think if you then kind of zoom out, you have the overall influence is Washington. But Trump in particular doesn't necessarily want to expend a lot of energy on Syria because he's looking, he's expanding his war theaters further afield. And as I said, in Africa, Latin America, potentially Iran. He's going to maintain the pressure on the region, but he doesn't want to expend too much. And he's also still got to, in theory, sort out what's happening in Ukraine, etc. So you have Washington at the top of the pile, right? But with as little involvement on the ground as possible. So what has then happened? The ground landscape has been handed over to Turkey in the north, Russia in the west and the northeast, and potentially the south. And what is interesting is that the US is now establishing a forward operating base in Mezzeh Air Base, which was a former Syrian army air base to the south of Damascus. If you draw a line from Mount Hermon, which is the highest, most strategic mountain on the border between Syria and Lebanon, so which Israel took over from December 2024. If you draw a line from that to where the US is now going to establish this forward operating base, across to the American base of Al Tanf, which has been there throughout the regime change war on the border with Iraq and Jordan, you effectively cut southern Syria away from Damascus. Then after so that will be under the control of Israel, with the US providing surveillance and security guarantees for Israel, demilitarization, no HTS elements to be allowed into the area, the potential for Russia to bring in a kind of UNIFIL operation, in theory, to prevent expansion of Israel, but I don't believe that for 1 minute. That just wouldn't work, because in that case, Russia would come into confrontation with Washington and Israel in the south, and that's not going to happen.
Right.
And then after the Moscow meeting, there were agreements that I've had confirmed to me, both from Russia and from Syria, that Russia may well establish bases in Homs and Hama. So that's to the northern border of Lebanon and to the south of Idlib coming into the coast where it already has its bases. And it's basically now bringing in personnel and hardware to those areas. It's also building up its personnel and equipment at the Karmishli air base, military base, which is in the northeast. So in my opinion, what you're seeing is, from the beginning, Israel lobbied Trump to keep Russia in Syria because Russia will provide Israel with the ability to push back against Turkish expansionism beyond the north. They're happy for now for Turkey to have control over Aleppo and the northern border, right? Of course, Turkey is trying to expand through a number of ways. It tried to bring in weapons under the auspices of bringing them in for Jolani. It got bombed by Israel. Now it's trying to extend the Adana agreement into, I think it's 30 kilometers in to Syria, and it's trying to put air defenses into that area, right? Because it wants to effectively have control of the entire northern border from the northwest to Iraq and to expel the Kurds. Mm-hmm. But the Kurds, in my opinion, are not going to be assimilated into Jolani's Takfiri forces. I think what will happen, the Kurds will be given some kind of autonomous region in the northeast, similar to what they were given in Iraq post the 2003 invasion, where they still have control of the oil and the resources, and they provide the link for Israel to create the David's corridor from the south going up the eastern border of Syria into the northeast. Now, why is Russia can only expand to the extent it is because it's doing this with agreement with Washington and Israel. It wouldn't happen otherwise. And for Russia, the important thing is, one, to maintain their foothold or their footprint in the Middle East, in Syria, but most importantly, it gives them a launch pad to Africa, which is really their most important market right now.
They want, right?
Yeah,
that's what they want. They want to maintain. Yeah, they definitely
without depending on Turkey, because if they had to relinquish Syria, they would be using Turkish airspace, and so it would put their dependency back on Turkey again. So that's also very important for Russia. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't trust Turkey. As far as you know. Erdogan is a slippery eel, man. Yeah, Erdogan only looks out for his own interest. One last thing before I let you go, Hezbollah. What is taking place within relation to the resistance as we speak? Israel is making this argument that Jolani is allowing corridors for Iran to assist Hezbollah. I mean, obviously they're going to, this is the same guy who showed up 20 years ago with a bomb, a cartoon bomb, saying in 10 minutes, Iran is going to have a bomb. So take it with a grain of salt. But the fact that Israel is being attacked and the fact that Hezbollah sent that letter effectively saying, look, we need to work together. I'm sorry, that Lebanon is being attacked. In fact, that Hezbollah sent the letter saying we need to work together in order to push back on this.
We need to support Lebanese sovereignty, and we need to defend the sovereignty of Lebanon. Yeah.
Is there any chance that that's going to be accepted and taken up by the government, or not so much?
I think the government is in a very difficult situation because, I mean, you have the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, who obviously is a puppet of Washington and Israel. As I said, this is the difficulty because of the Taif agreement. You have all of the sects equally represented within government, so that actually creates a form of paralysis, right? But you do have a President, Joseph Aoun, who was formerly head of the military. And I think, in a sense, he does understand the situation, and hence why Barak has shown so much frustration. The government, in his view, is just not doing what it's told, and it hasn't disarmed Hezbollah, and the army hasn't disarmed Hezbollah, and all the economic pressure that has been put on Lebanon hasn't worked, and Hezbollah is still in existence and is still basically saying to Israel, we still have the power to be able to provide deterrence against you, and we will use that. the country also knows that if Israel were to weaponize, for example, Jolani and the Takfiri forces, then Hezbollah is absolutely necessary, because the Lebanese armed forces, sponsored by the US and kept at a level where they can't defend the country against Israel, they can to a degree against the Takfiri forces, but the two together, no, they can't. So Hezbollah is necessary to the country if things escalate, which they do appear to be doing. And we can't forget also that Pete Hegseth very recently made the threat to the Iraqi Defense Minister Abbasi, saying, look, when we kick off something in the region, the resistance actors in Iraq better not respond, because you know what will happen. I mean, this is a direct threat. This is a declaration of war against Iraq. In my opinion, for now, I think they feel they have Hezbollah contained to a degree. In my opinion, the next target will actually be Iraq, or it could be together. I don't know. Everyone here is a bit sort of bated breath, waiting to see what happens. But I think it's necessary for them, in their opinion, to weaken Iraq again.
Really? So you think that the attacks will be against Iraq? I mean, for the longest time, people were thinking Iran, and then the pressure seemed to deflated on that attack.
I think Yemen also, because I think the sudden re-emergence, because it never really died down, all of the violence and genocide in Darfur, in Somalia, in Eritrea. Whereas that, it's on the Horn of Africa, on the Red Sea, facing Yemen. So in my opinion, that's also related to what might potentially happen with Yemen. And Yemen now is talking quite belligerently and quite rightly, because they've just arrested 21 spies from the coalition of Saudi Arabia, Israel, UK, and United States. They are now talking about, they're gathering the tribes in Sadr, which is the most northernmost province on the border with Hejaz, Saudi Arabia. And they're talking about, if Saudi Arabia doesn't, come into line and actually start respecting Yemeni sovereignty, and actually coming to a deal that ensures Yemen's sovereignty and resource sovereignty, then there's potential for an invasion of Hejaz.
Wow.
So
Ansarallah has some balls on them. I give them credit.
Yeah, they do.
Like I've always, I've been impressed, like just shocked by their willingness to extend themselves in this way. And they've been willing to do it all
extraordinary.
Yeah. Have you ever had the opportunity to visit Yemen by chance?
No, I've been trying since I think 2014, and I got quite close a couple of times, and then it got sideswept, and the most recent was only about a year ago, and then I can't remember what happened. Oh, I know, Israel bombed the airport at Sana'a, so all of their planes were put out of action. Of course. Because they were starting to open the doors to foreigners coming in to actually see what was happening. And so what did Israel do? It bombed the airport, so that could no longer happen. And to maintain the siege on Yemen, of course.
Vanesssa, you are awesome.
Thank you.
I swear to God, man, you have lived an exciting life. And by the exciting doesn't mean calm. Doesn't mean safe. Doesn't mean any of those things. But nevertheless, I've always been impressed. So thank you for this. And just for the audience to know, Vanesssa Beeley, she is an investigative journalist. You can find her work on Twitter. Well, on Vanesssa Beeley Substack, there's that. But you can also find her on Twitter at Vanesssa Beeley. You can support her work at patreon.com/Vanesssa Beeley. Vanesssa, you be safe and you have a good one, okay? Thank you for this.
Yeah, you too, Jamal. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Vanesssa is awesome. Shout out to her. She has my deepest appreciation for joining me. She is a great guest. Let me make sure. And damn, I got something wrong. 1 second. time is it now? It is time zones. No, that's fine. Shout out to Vanesssa. She is awesome. Vanesssa is awesome. The time zone thing is always takes a bit to get used to work your head into a 15-minute time thing. Look, before my next guest comes on, I would like to talk about Trump and the Epstein list. Donald Trump is screwed. Donald Trump is screwed. When I say screwed, I mean screwed. So there has been a release of certain, let's say, emails that come out from Epstein directly. And the emails make it very clear that Donald Trump continues his association with Epstein, even up to something like 2017. Epstein makes it clear that Donald Trump was perfectly aware of the girls thing, of the young girls. And don't take my word for it. You can look at his emails to either Ghislaine Maxwell or, for that matter, Michael Hudson. I'm sorry, Michael Wolff. Wolff is the reporter. I'm going to show a few of these, and you give me your take on whether you deem these emails to be significant or not. And there are a litany of them. New York Times has published at the very least 3. There are more that are effectively floating around because there was a tranche of emails that were effectively released. Let's look into some of these emails. And I want to get your take on whether or not you think Donald Trump is a pedophile. Because, look, what this boils down to is this. The Trump administration got in office under this idea of we're going to make America great again. We're going to focus on America. We're going to do great things for the economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I thought the people who believed that were being cartoonish, but whatever, right? You had a lot of people who believe that stuff for Obama. You had a lot of people who believe that stuff for Sanders. You have a lot of people who believe that stuff. Add in random politician here. Hell, apparently even ISIS believed it with al-Shara, al-Jilani, whatever you want to call him. I am pointing out that the president is compromised. Full stop. This is the New York Times publishing 3 of these emails. Here's the first one. Ghislaine Maxwell. I've been thinking about that. And he says, I want you to realize that dog hasn't barked, or the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. The name of the victim, meaning one of the people that was sexually abused, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Now, 75% where? 75% in outing the fact that Donald Trump was hanging out with sexual abuse victims at his house? Is that what you're 75% there with? Here's another one. This one is to Michael Wolff. The victim, again, another girl, child who was sexually abused, Mar-a-Lago. And it says, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. So it's like, he is basically saying Donald Trump knew that I was sexually abusing young girls. I knew that he knew for obvious reasons because of my association with him. But the fact that Trump asked Ghislaine to stop, why would you need to ask somebody to stop if you were unaware of the sexual abuse? Just add these 2 emails together, right? She says, I've been thinking about that. Now, we don't know the previous email, but obviously just with a bit of context in the sense of, okay, what have you been thinking about, Ghislaine Maxwell? And it's, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. The victim that I sexually abused spent hours at my house with Donald Trump. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. So it's very possible that Ghislaine Maxwell was like, why don't you say something about the fact that Donald Trump either knew or was involved in the sexual abuse? And his thing is, I'm 75% there. At least that's the context that I give it. And here's another one. I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on a plane or to your house, then that gives you a valuable public relations and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Of course, it is possible. When asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed by a Trump regime. And right here, he says, I hear CNN's plan and asked Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is Michael Wolff. Yeah, this is Michael Wolff saying this. And here's, if we were ever able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it would be? So the important part to this is effectively like, look, Michael Wolff, reporter, having a conversation with Epstein, saying, hey, if Donald Trump wins, you could effectively use this to get political leverage. And of course, in the Trump administration, they are not necessarily going to be on board for political correctness. And you may get him to say that, oh, this is horrible. He's been, they've gone after him politically, etc. Now, the wild part about this is what you're talking about is a pedophile. All of this is about a pedophile. And so when Michael Wolff is having this conversation, he's talking to a pedophile. And he's telling a pedophile, hey, your association with Donald Trump, you can use that association to get political leverage on Donald Trump, especially if Donald Trump wins, because you know where the bodies are buried. You know that Donald Trump has been at your house. You know that Donald Trump has been at your airplane. You know Donald Trump has hung out with the sexual abuse victims. You know all of these things because you were with him as he was doing whatever. That's leverage. You can use that leverage. Now, they never asked Trump that question, just to be very clear. And when I say political leverage, and I say this idea of you on some level got him by the balls, where's Ghislaine Maxwell right now? Where's Ghislaine Maxwell? Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in a jail cell. True. But as she sits in a jail cell, what Ghislaine Maxwell has effectively been getting is special privileges. Don't look it up for yourself. She's been getting special privileges. The guards have been complaining about the special privileges that Ghislaine Maxwell has been getting and working with a lawyer for a pardon. Now, I said this once before when Pam Bondi or a member of her staff went to Ghislaine Maxwell and said, hey, we need you to give a document saying that Trump had nothing to do with this. Now, that's not the way they explained it, but for all intents and purposes, you are perfectly aware that the president can pardon you. Joe Biden pardoned his son on the way out. The president has that capability and power to do, even for pedophiles and people who work to get young girls for those pedophiles. If you are Ghislaine Maxwell and you know it as a flat fact, and you know, based upon the emails that were just released, that Donald Trump had a close association with Epstein, even when it was perfectly clear that Epstein was an apex pedophile, an apex predator, say, hey, Trump is getting a lot of heat about the Epstein stuff. We have all of these documents and files. We can't release these files because they would obviously, as the emails do, implicate the fact that Donald Trump was most likely a pedophile. So, what we need you to do, did Donald Trump have anything to do with Epstein? No, he did not. He's a beautiful man. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't touch young girls at all. He doesn't grab them by the pussy. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He's an upright, upstanding citizen. Okay, he's an upright, upstanding citizen. Okay, well, fair enough. Well, obviously, we can't give you a pardon, but thank you for your contribution to the case. And of course, there's nothing at all to stop Trump on his way out. Ghislaine has served time long enough. This has been a witch hunt by the previous administration. We're letting her out. Obviously, you can't do it now because it seems like a quid pro quo. But there's nothing to stop you from telling your lawyer, hey, instead of you serving 20 years, you serve 3. Nothing at all. And so, sure, the political leverage may not be used by Epstein because he is no longer associated with this mortal coil. There's nothing to stop Ghislaine Maxwell from using it. And if she knows where the bodies are buried, she could do one of 2 things. She could come out in an interview and say, yeah, Donald Trump was a pedophile and stay in jail for 20 years. Or she could say, Donald Trump was an upright, upstanding citizen. I've never seen him once touch a young girl. I don't believe he would do it. God damn it, he's a saint. Which one do you think it would be? You tell me. Which one do you think it would be? Just, as a human being, which one do you think it would be? Stay in prison for 20 years? Stay in prison for 3 years? Which one? Obviously, as a human being, the woman, as accused anyway, was handing over young girls to be sexually assaulted. Do you think that she would have an issue of lying to protect somebody if it gets her out of jail for 3 years? Hell, you could be a saint and would at the very least feel the pressure to lie in order to get out of jail for 3 years and get various favors while you're in that same jail. Club fed, or club fed, I think is what they call it. I hope you get the point that I'm making here. And it's not just those 3. There are more emails. And there was a report that came out that the White House was freaking out over this. I mean, and by the way, not just for Trump. There are other people that are being implicated in these emails because Jeffrey Epstein was a mover and shaker. And some of the emails are referencing people like Peter Thiel, other corporate execs. This is Tapper talking about this issue. Listen to what Tapper says here, which I actually suspect is true.
Stop the
Come on, Tapper.
Trump administration and President Trump appeared to be in something of a full court press to try and stop the discharge petition from working. Sources are telling CNN the top Trump administration officials held a meeting on this issue, not just at the White House, but in the Situation Room. Now, according to multiple sources, the meeting was said to have included the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado. Boebert is one of the 4 Republican members of the House who has signed the petition.
So the Trump administration is in a full court press to stop Epstein emails, Epstein files from hitting the public. If you were an innocent man, if you were innocent of all of this, would you care? Would you care? He had it as a campaign promise. And say you, as innocent man, Congress is like, hey, we're going to release the files. And hey, it may step on some toes. What do you as an innocent man say? What do I care? I'm innocent. I'm not associated with the stuff. There's no ties. There's no hooks in me. Why do I care? But what if you're not an innocent man? What if you know that those emails exist? What if you know your crimes, regardless of anybody else? What if you know your crimes, which, unless you can download your memories to some kind of disk and destroy the disk, but we don't have that technology, right? So you're stuck with the things that you have effectively done. Those things have followed you to the White House. And now, apex pedophile, dead, But there's still documentation associated with that apex pedophile. If you are connected to those things, maybe you will be in the Situation Room with your Attorney General, doing any and everything in your power to prevent that information from coming to the light of day. Now, if you are a Republican, how do you say no to that? How do you say no? How do you stand up in front of your congressional district under the withering light of an election? And they said, you are protecting a pedophile. That's what you were doing. You were literally protecting a pedophile. They were raping children. And you were out there defending that guy and the people associated with that guy. What do you say? How do you stand against that? How do you stand against an assault like that? Especially when that assault and that point of view is true. How? Now, Thomas Massey, Rokana, a few other Congress members have pointed out, hey, man, that's going to be a tough election for them if indeed they stand and prevent this information from coming to the light of day. I think those people are right. I think the president, on some level, is screwed. He is stuck with a situation where it comes across as if he's doing any and everything in his power to throw his body to protect a pedophile and the people associated with that pedophile. I would wager most likely also himself. That doesn't look good under any circumstances. That doesn't look good. They thought that this issue was effectively over with. They were wrong. And these emails effectively bring this issue back into the limelight with more force than it had in the very beginning. We'll see what happens. But it will be a hard way for those people who decide to stand in the way. And look, let's be clear. It's not like the Democrats cared, right? If they cared, they would have put the stuff out when they were in power. They're doing it to go after their political opponents. But whether they're doing it to go after their political opponents or not is irrelevant to the point. Are you going to protect the pedophile or not? Were you associated with that pedophile or not? And are you compromised because of your association with that pedophile? Those are important questions. And those questions need to be answered. It is a big deal. It's not a minor deal. If the people who are in your Congress, or for that matter, the president himself, is compromised because he liked to have sex with children, or at the very least associate closely with somebody who is an apex pedophile who was effectively selling these kids off for political influence, that is not a minor thing. That is not a minor distinction. And all things being equal, if they make that choice to stand by Trump on this, or at the very least to throw their bodies to protect those people, they're going to have a withering political race when it's their time to actually run again for office. I see my man is here. We are joined. Andrii Telizhenko. Haven't seen you in a while, man. How you doing? You doing all right?
Hi, Jamal. Doing okay. How are you?
I am doing well. I am better that you are with me. Andrii Telizhenko is a Ukrainian whistleblower and former diplomat. Andrii, the noose is getting closer around the throat of Zelensky. And I mean that in the most literal, well, I can't say the literal sense of the word, but I mean it in the most real sense of the word. There have been investigations, probes by Nabu and Sapo. Now, the audience may not remember this, but well, audience probably would. A few months ago, there was investigations where you had the SBU raid the offices of Nabu and Sapo. And Zelensky, because they were investigating people within his inner circle, was doing any and everything in their power to effectively put the kibosh on their independence, quote unquote. Now, let's be honest, these are not independent organizations. These are organizations that are effectively ran out of Washington, or at the very least ran out of Europe. But that is kind of the issue that Ukraine was effectively dealing with. It's like, hey, you guys are investigating me and my inner circle. I need you to stop. And I need to somehow gain control over these organizations. This is a foreign, let's say, police force of sorts that is coming after the people who are close to me. And not just close to me, maybe even me. Now, Nabu put out hours of testimony or hours of secret conversations among Zelensky, among people in Zelensky's circle,
And Zelensky too. He's there too.
Right, but they haven't put out the audio footage of Zelensky yet, but it's rumored that Zelensky is also in those tapes. And you had on Wednesday, Justice Minister German, I think this is called Galushenko, put in his resignation. Energy Minister Svetlana Grinchuk put in her resignation hours later. Former business associate of Zelensky, Timur Mitch, I think this is
Mindich.
Yeah, he fled the country hours before they raided his office. And we're talking about like hundreds of millions of dollars that were supposed to go to defense, security, that have effectively been laundered. I mean, they found money in his house. When you find money in somebody's dresser, like hundreds of euros, or like hundreds of like rolls of euros in somebody's cabinets and stuff like that. Yeah, that looks bad. That looks very bad, right? And so this is obviously a big corruption scheme that is roiling Zelensky's administration, because each of these investigations seems to get closer and closer to Zelensky. And it doesn't seem to be coincidental that it is getting closer and closer to Zelensky. Give me your take on this. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's not just getting closer to Zelensky, it's on Zelensky.
Yeah.
I think it's the beginning of an end for Zelensky's regime. I talked about this for months and months. We spoke about this with you on air, and I talked about that there's a case in the United States, a RICO case happening since February, investigating Zelensky and his surrounding and money laundering U.S. taxpayers' dollars from Ukraine. So that's overall what is happening, and I can tell you Zelensky is in those tapes. It's just his name is put on 3 dots. There's no, like in the transcripts. There's a couple where people are talking. There's names of different people, and there's one person who's just 3 dots or 3 stars in that under his name. So there's like no name. It's blacked out. But that's where he is. There's tapes of him talking out there. There's transcripts of him talking, but nobody can confirm that's him or not yet. So it's going there. And I can tell you that this is the West. Yes, this is NABU, SAPO. It's the Western-controlled agencies in Ukraine that are going after Zelensky. At the beginning, the West told Zelensky, they gave him a green light with this war, starting this war. He said, you can become a billionaire with us, and that's what he became, much richer than President Trump right now, I can tell you that, illegally, and the bloodshed of people's basically lives, and the country being destroyed. He did not close down NABU when he became president, even though he could. It was not a Ukrainian agency. It was a foreign-run agency, which everybody knew about. And so it's when he made a deal with the West, he should have understood that the West is going to destroy him at one point when he's not just not obeying orders, but he's basically becoming very uncomfortable for a lot of people, not just within Ukraine and within the society. People just hate him, and the military and the people, the society, everybody on the streets just hate Zelensky. All those sociology they're posting out there, people are just afraid to tell the truth. But when you're talking to people on the phone or just off record, most of the people just say, we hate him, let him, hang him or whatever, do something that he has to leave. So this is the reality. And the West is having the same issue. There's a problem with a guy named Zelensky. Before, he was a co-star for our blood show in Ukraine. Now the situation in Ukraine is rising, the tensions are rising. And that's one thing. Second of all, he's not, he lost the situation, he's lost control of Ukraine, he lost the situation on the front a long time ago, so there needs to be changes. They're going to just try to change him to another puppet, probably, of their own, like Poroshenko, Klitschko, Zelensky, all that crowd. They're the same people. There's going to be the same masters of the puppet are going to run the show. So it's just going to be a new face. So that's what it's coming to. And the criminal case right now, it's not just against the surrounding of Zelensky. Actually, Mindich is the cashier for Zelensky. He holds not only hundreds of $billions of offshoring money of the U.S. taxpayers' dollars, and the money was coming in for defense, the Firepoint company that was running, selling drones to the Ukrainian military, which cost twice as much than the drones on the market. Basically, the drones that are on the market are around $15,000, $20,000. They were selling their drones made in Ukraine for $55,000 each, and they were worthless. And maybe thank God they were worthless because less people died, but overall. And that's one thing. Second of all, the Flamingo ballistic missile, the so-called, or whatever missile they were showing off, also a scam. They money laundered on that. So, making deals with Denmark and other European and NATO countries on basically producing fuel for their military through the Fireport company. Everybody knew that it was a scam organization. It was a money laundering process for the Europeans, the Westerners, using Ukraine and Zelensky's inner circle. But the main thing Mindich holds for Zelensky, not just these contracts and these money laundering processes for hundreds of millions of dollars. He holds the private pocket of Zelensky for a couple of $1 billion on his flash drive of Bitcoin. That's what Mindich holds for Zelensky. So he is one of the money makers, and he's basically the main pocket for Zelensky. There's the Shafir brothers, who also fled Ukraine a couple months ago. They're also the money pockets. But Mindich holds one of the largest assets from what's known, a couple of $1 billion in Bitcoin on a flash drive that he carries around with him. There's the Zuckerman brothers that are in the criminal case, and there's other people involved in this. But these are people, not just businessmen, but they're people who are Zelensky. Zelensky is them. So this is one organization, one case. And that's why it's not just against these people, it's against Zelensky himself, Yermak, and that surrounding. So they're going to hopefully something's going to happen, and maybe this is, as I said, beginning of the end of this regime, and something might good happen out of this. Well, they're going to try to change somebody to something. Maybe we're going to have real changes in Ukraine.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Mindich was initially, he wasn't even in weapons at one point.
No,
like he was effectively like a business partner dealing with Zelensky's
PR producer and he was the Firepoint company where we're talking about producing overpriced drones, missiles, and fuel for missiles and to NATO countries. It was a PR company and basically for the production of the Zelensky's TV series Quartal 95. And they were basically, what they were doing, they were basically taking in scamming models and everything else and making money on that. So this is what they were before. It was not involved in any military-industrial complex processes at all. But then it changed when the war started, and even before the war started, they began to change that. And I know that there was a big pressure from the security service of Ukraine. Anybody who wanted to open up a drone factory in Ukraine to profit on the war, but also make business, but also produce drones and fight this war, they had to pay a $50 million bribe to the government to open up a factory. So nobody wanted to do that. So basically they put the security service of Ukraine was controlling and helping the Zelensky regime to control the situation and not let anybody open up any other businesses, so they won't be basically in the market. Only this Fireport would be the monopoly. Can you imagine paying $50 million just to open up a firm? Nobody would want to do that. So people just went away from this business.
Oh, that sucks. I mean,
well, that's the reality of Ukraine. That's what we were talking about. You were talking about this for years. I was talking about this for years. And the problem is now everybody just realized, no, everybody knew about this. The West knew about this is happening within Zelensky. They let him become a billionaire. They let him make money. They knew that he was scamming people. And it was not just the Westerners, Americans, the deep state within America, Lindsey Graham, neocons, deep state in Europe involved in this. They were basically sending him money. He was laundering that money, not just only for himself, but for these people also. Well, the military-industrial complex, this money was coming back to America, laundered, clean, and basically in the pockets of the deep staters, neocons, and to continue this war. That's what they were supporting this war, and that's what they're still supporting this war. Anybody who supports this war in the U.S. political sphere or any other political sphere who understands what's happening, or they're crazy and they're really warmongers and devils, or they're just money-making process on this. They're just profiting from this whole situation. Like Lindsey Graham is sucking up his pockets with millions of dollars, getting basically money back to him, other people within the United States government. So this is what it's all about. Anybody speaking out of the war, he's profiting from this. 99% of people are profiting. They don't believe in this war at all. They understand Ukraine is done. They're just using Ukraine and the bodies of these Ukrainians to continue to profit and make billions of dollars into their basically pockets.
Well, that's what I mean by say it sucks. Because you would think that if a country is at war, then there is a patriotic component to it, where the money, and I get this is schoolboy philosophy, right? But that there's this kind of patriotic thought of, hey, we need to support the war effort and we need to defend the country. And so money that goes to defense is actually going to go to defense. So we're going to build defenses. We're going to build barricades. We're going to build areas in order to defend the troops. We're going to.
If I could add to, you said if it's a war, patriotic. The problem is this war is fake. It's real war, but this war was made up. It was not like a real war, real countries like fighting against each other for some reason. It was made up politically, built up to have this war happen. Since 2014, when Ukraine, after the coup, was ordered to shell Donbass by the director of CIA, Brennan, and I was in that meeting in 2014, beginning of 2014. He told to shell the people of Donbass because they wanted to support Russia, or they wanted to become free, or they didn't want to support the Kyiv regime after the coup. This war could have ended. We had the Minsk Accords. We had every other possibility throughout the 10-year phase to not have this war. This war was made up, built into the minds by fake propaganda. And that's it. It's not like people fighting, Muslims and Christians are fighting, or Christians and Jewish are fighting, or Muslims and Jews. No, it's not even that. It's brothers, the same blood. We're part of one country. We have families living on one side of the aisle of this border. The father and the mother of the general, of the chief of staff of the Ukrainian army, is living in Moscow. He's dying there from cancer, and the Russians are actually helping him from supporting his family. This is how it is. The chief of staff of the Ukrainian army that's killing Russians has his father living in Moscow. So this war should have never happened. It's not a real war. That's why it's fake. It was made up. It was done politically to do what for the West to make money, try to dismantle Russia. Thank God it didn't happen, and now they're just making money in this. So if it was a real patriotic war, the truth was on the Ukrainian side. Yes, maybe something would be different, but there's no truth on the Ukrainian side. It's all made up. Russia has the truth. They were trying to stop this for years, 10 years, begging, don't let us get involved in this as we are going to get involved because it's going to lead to bloodshed. If they wanted to destroy Ukraine would have been destroyed within days. Nobody just shelled Kyiv. I was in Kyiv in the first weeks of the war. Nobody shelled Kyiv. Kyiv was shelled only military targets. I was in my balcony, not afraid of the missiles. I was afraid of the government in Ukraine because they're going to kill me because of war for peace. So this war is fake because it was made up by the Kyiv regime in the West to say, "Oh, Russia is bad." So this is why there's a big difference. This is why this is a big scam. The scam is everywhere, and when there's no truth, the lies come spilling out one day, and this is now what the time is. They're coming out, spilling out, and we're seeing them all over the place.
Why do you think that this is happening now, that Nabu and Sapo are doing this? As you point out, this was something that's been taking place for a while. It's weird, kind of, that these organizations that were there, they were supposed to be quote unquote anti-corruption agencies, all of a sudden are like, hey, there's gambling in this establishment. Meaning it was already clear that corruption was endemic in the way that they were operating. But it's only now that they've come to this assessment of, hey, now we need to do something about it. So now we're outing people. Now we're going after people. People are resigning. People are fleeing the country. Why are they doing this now from your point of view? I know you mentioned that Zelensky has gotten, let's say, unpopular, even by Western standards. Why has he gotten unpopular by Western standards?
Because first of all, he didn't fulfill what he was supposed to do. He tried to get an uprising in Russia by having Russia invade Ukraine, provoke this war. That was one thing. Second of all, even the money-making process is there, but it's less and less and less. Before it was $350 billion, $400 billion altogether. More than half of it, I can guarantee you, was not brought to the front lines. Like that was the budget was more over than the military budget of the Russian Federation, but still they're winning.
Yes,
Russia is winning, and Ukraine did nothing. They have look at the army has nothing. As like they have no food even for the military in Ukraine. They're sending people like dogs to the front lines. The lifespan of a soldier from the Ukrainian side on the hotspot in the front lines is 4 hours. That's the reality. So they have nothing. They have no money to pay out to the soldiers, to the dead one, to the families of the dead soldiers. So that money was stolen. Now there's less and less money coming in. And so a lot of it needs to go to support of Ukraine, at least so it won't fall apart. So there's no interest. There's nothing to gain from Ukraine. There's no minerals in Ukraine. We talked about this. There's no $300 billion worth of minerals. So everybody understood that. There's around $20 billion worth of minerals. I told you that last time when we spoke, or $22 billion. So there's no interest in that. That's a small portion where you can make a deal with Russia and China or over the world. You got to get much more than that. And so there's nothing to gain from Ukraine. Ukraine is just being used right now to make a deal with Russia. So that's why you need to get this thing over with, change the puppets in Kiev to continue this war maybe for a year or two if needed. And that's it. Ukraine will be thrown away by the West. And that's it. I think the deal is already made. It's just Ukraine is just being used in the situation to make a deal with Russia to get something out of Russia more, or out of China, use the situation to get China and Russia to stay apart, anything. They need this time. And the time is, the problem is Russia has time, the West has time, Ukraine doesn't have time. Nobody cares about Ukraine in this situation, especially the West. Because Russia cares because they understand they have to rebuild it. The West is not going to rebuild Ukraine. So Zelensky and his team failed. They don't understand the reality of the situation on the ground. They lost the popularity from the Western supporters. They're not getting in as much money as they used to before to the West because there's no money coming in because the government changed in Washington and there's no much deep state and neocons in power. There are some like Rubio, but that's separate. He has the influence, but he doesn't have the capacity to increase the budget to support Ukraine. What the Europeans are giving is 40-60% less than what was given before under the Biden administration. So they cannot fulfill their support for Ukraine in reality. So they need to change something so it won't erupt and not backfire to them, and not because when the people will have a chance to vote in Ukraine for a real person, they'll probably vote in for somebody who want to make peace with Russia and end this war. Because when I'm talking to people on the ground, government officials, soldiers are telling me they don't care about which flag flies over them. They want to live in a peaceful, normal country, and they got to get their lives back. If it's going to be the Russian flag, we don't care. That's what the people are saying to me on the ground in Kiev, in eastern Ukraine, and even in western Ukraine. So this is what's all about. That the West is trying to use this momentum and take control over back of Ukraine because they're losing that control. So the people understand the propaganda which is being pushed into them doesn't work anymore. It's all lies. They understand what's happening. The front line is falling apart. You have eastern Ukraine is being falling apart day by day. Every month, it's more than 500 square kilometers are being taken over by the Russian military, freeing the land. Kharkiv region is being freed more and more. There's parts of Kharkiv region where the Russian troops just crossed the border in different parts, and the Ukrainian army has no capacity to stop them. So everybody understands what has happened. More than 2 million dead and wounded from the Ukrainian side. People know a lot of people lost a lot of people, a lot of loved ones on the Ukrainian side. So they know a lot of villages are empty. There's no men in a lot of villages throughout Ukraine because everybody was sent to the front lines and then never came back. So people just wanted to stop, and the West needs to take control over back of Ukraine. That's what they're doing. That's what they're pushing for a coup in Kiev, and they want to change the government to somebody they can control or take control of Ukraine back again, and at least throw another dust in the eyes of the people in Ukraine and in the West. There's a new leader. It's back on track. This guy is more legit. Blah blah blah. So that's what it's all about. That's what the West does.
Why do you think Zelensky allowed for the younger generation to leave the country? I think he allowed from 18 to 21, I believe. Yeah,
18 to 22.
to leave the country. Why? I mean, this was something that the West was pushing for very hard. Klitschko just called for the age to be lessened, lowered, to allow those kids to effectively fight in the military. Why did the government allow the kids to leave?
Because so much pressure within the society that it could have erupted against them uncontrollably. Because usually the coups, the revolutions are done within the control by somebody. Somebody, it's usually the West does those pretty well. I can tell you that the West does great work on changing leaders and leadership around the globe illegally. And they wanted to take control. So, and Zelensky understood it himself. He needed that to have more time and power, maybe settle things down. But if he didn't do that, it would have happened in a much more aggressive way. There's a lot of people who came back from the front lines, soldiers who, with weapons, not just weapons, machine guns and grenades, they came back with armored trucks and vehicles running from the front lines, having them with them, basically stole them from the military. And can you imagine this force, even a couple of thousand people with military training, or some military training with weapons, aggressive. They have no, basically they were sent to the front lines to die, but they saved themselves. They're going to go on the government. So they need to lower this pressure. The people would support them. So that's why he did it. He thought that it would work, but it didn't. It only made it worse for him because people did flee Ukraine. A lot of people tried to save their lives, went out of the country. But at the same time, they still have a capacity of around, I think 3 million or 2.5 million men who are still in Ukraine by the books that they can take. They're hiding all over the place, that they can use them and send to the front lines to fight and to continue this war for another year or a year and a half. So they calculated it pretty well that they still have the capacity of the 25 and up to use to fight this war and try to do this maneuver, PR stunt, to try to lower the pressure within the society.
Who do you think they're trying to get? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Zelensky. Is that the person who you think they're trying to put into place?
The West, yes. The West, yes. He's a total. I don't want to say the guy doesn't understand anything. Like you have to see him talk. He doesn't know what he's talking about within the political sphere. Maybe he's a good military guy, but I doubt it. He lost so many people when he was the chief of staff. Basically this war happened under him, and he was provoking this war, saying that 6 months before the special operation started in Ukraine, saying that we're going to go have our tanks on Arbat in Moscow. Look it up. It was a thing he said in August of 2001. Zelensky talked about it, but he's going to drive a tank through Arbat in Moscow, that he's going to be basically taking over Moscow. And then when the war started, he lost everything. And then he was saved by the British and sent out to London to protect him so they can change him. And because he doesn't understand anything that he's been told, he's going to be a good puppet like Zelensky. The same thing, he doesn't understand any political moves or maneuvers. So he's going to be a very useful idiot to control and within the Ukrainian government or the Kyiv regime or Klitschko. So it's the same crowd. The problem is these people Klitschko is a German citizen. He's owned by the West. Also goes to Washington regularly or has lobbyists in Washington. Poroshenko, the same thing. Zelensky is basically controlled and backed by London. Maybe the United States is going to back him at one point. So these people are not for Ukraine. None of them are for Ukraine. All of the politicians who are in Kyiv are not for Ukraine. Even Dubinsky, who's in prison, talking about Trump and saying the right things from his mouth, but he is basically, out of 20,000 people who are political prisoners in Ukraine, he's the only one who can tweet 10 tweets a day, post and talk about it, and looks better than most of the people who are free and in a suit in a courtroom, basically having his beard done, his hair done, everything's okay with him, and he's basically, as a political prisoner, saying that he's talking that he can take over Ukraine. These are puppets for the same reason. If something changes, they're going to be the same people in charge. Same people with the same puppet masters are going to control all these people. All the real opposition is the ones who actually are on kill lists who actually had to flee, who are not being let out to speak, who are in prison, but they cannot speak from prison. Like people like Nestor Shulfich, for example, a politician in Ukraine who is in prison, he cannot speak. Kolomoisky, I don't support him, but the guy is in prison, but he doesn't tweet. He doesn't have people tweet for him. Like, he's an oligarch. The guy has billions of dollars. He cannot buy himself possibility to have his lawyers tweet for him and come in court and speak whatever he wants. No. So this is, you have to understand where there's the reality and where there's fake. A lot of Ukrainian politicians are fake. So anybody who they change for the West is not going to be good for Ukraine. You need somebody who can come in, who's going to be neutral, who will come in and actually make real peace in Ukraine and make a deal with Russia and actually stop this war. That's what the person who we need to. And some of those people are in Russia. Yes, they are. Some of those people are in the West. Yes, they are. But a lot of people are still working with the West, like Arestovich, Dubinsky. I have a lot of questions to those people.
Give me a name of somebody who you think will be a neutral, middle of the road person who would be willing to do that.
I don't want to name names. You have to understand, you have to have people who were in the Ukrainian political sphere. Okay, for example, if you want to name, but it's not I'm backing him up or I'm supporting him, Azarov. Nikolai Azarov, right? He was a former prime minister. He was a very good prime minister. Under him, the economy was pretty well. He knows good politics. He knows actually the economy of the country. He knows how to make a deal with Russia. And he was there from the beginning of Ukraine. He was trying to do stuff. So he actually knows what he's talking about. And he is not just a politician, as most of the people who are in Ukraine. He is a statesman. Ukraine needs a statesman who actually doesn't have his advisors telling him what to say, because there's some right now young members of parliament who fled Ukraine, and I know them personally, but they're saying the right things, but they have their advisors telling them everything what to say. On their own, you put them out to speak and tell them, give me understanding what your future Ukraine is going to be. It's not going to give me anything because he doesn't understand what he's talking about. Yeah. You need a person actually who has a background in government affairs, who actually had some part of controlling something in the government, good or bad, but he actually had some basically understanding of how government works. You cannot just have a person like Zelensky come in. We had this nonsense before. So this is an example, a statesman. We need a statesman. For me, Azarov is a statesman. I don't know if he's going to be the leader. I don't support him. But I'm just saying as an example, that's kind of person like to look up to and to look for people like that who can come into Ukraine and actually start digging through the rubble and rebuilding the country, making peace, not just with Russia, but with Belarus, with former Soviet countries, with Hungary, with Slovakia, even with Poland right now. Ukraine has shitty relationships. Sorry for my language, but even just rebuild that for Ukrainians' sake, because Ukraine had a possibility to be in the middle of Russia and Europe to make profit out of it. What Turkey is doing. Have a person like Erdogan run Ukraine, a statesman who can be on both sides, or like Lukashenko or like Putin. If Ukraine would have somebody like that, we would have no war. We would have a different country. Ukraine at least would be Ukraine, but we will not have Ukraine anymore. We will have something else.
Something confuses me, and maybe it confuses me because I didn't live in Ukraine. So William Burns wrote this memo, Niet means Niet. And in the memo, he pointed out that frictions over NATO membership is going to provoke a civil war that Russia's not going to get involved in, but it wouldn't have a choice but to do so. The part that I'm focusing on, though, is that frictions over joining NATO were effectively going to provoke a civil war. The frictions over NATO were that extensive. I mean, like, it was that. There's a movie, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it goes into Ukraine, and it talks about how Ukraine was not this fractious, friction-filled fight before 2008. Like, before the NATO issue became an issue, that people weren't at each other's throats, that it didn't look like there was going to be a civil war, that this stuff was kind of steeped in from the outside. Is that the way you see it too? That this wasn't an issue per se. This was an issue that was somewhat created, not an issue that was already there naturally.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what I'm talking about. This war is fake. Like, it was politicized through propaganda from one side. It made basically what they did is when they started moving the NATO thing into Ukraine, they lured Ukraine into the NATO thing by promising that Ukraine is going to join NATO, but at the same time they needed Ukraine to have a civil war within the post-Soviet countries and Russia get involved, because they thought what Brzezinski, adding to what Burns wrote, but what Brzezinski wrote before, is Russia's going to fall into different pieces. That's what they needed, the outcome. The United States and the West tried to do this 100 years ago, beginning with the Civil War, or with the end of the Russian Empire. That's what they tried to do, with Lenin coming in with billions of dollars, whatever. That's, I don't want to go into history. Like, people are going to criticize me for that.
But Germany gave Lenin like a bomb.
They tried to do that. Everybody had 100 years ago. They had the British, the Germans, the Americans involved. Trotsky was from the United States. Like, he came in with a lot of. He was not from the United States, but he had a lot of people from the United States come in to support that. So basically, the West tried to destroy Russia 100 years ago. It didn't work out. They tried to do it during World War II. After the World War II finished, Churchill tried to go into Soviet Union. The unclassified files right now we see it didn't work out for him. He never made it, and that was because Europe was also destroyed, and they tried to destroy Russia. But now they did the same thing with Ukraine, because they had two Slavic nations fight between each other, like Russia and Ukraine, which are very close. Ukraine is even much more closer to Russia than Belarus is. So you have two countries fighting to each other. And you have a president in Russia, which will try to topple the government in Russia and have Russia break up into different pieces. But they had that already prepared in Russia. They had centers, all these Navalny, all that so-called Russian opposition working for the West. I knew all these opposition. I knew Boris Nemtsov. I knew Ilya Yashin. They told me personally how it worked. They were getting money from the Norwegians, €1 million, from the Europeans, from different other European countries, officially, or unofficially, but officially into Russia, and they were using that money to bribe people around Russia to bring forces to try to topple the Russian, basically, government and have it fall apart into different pieces. So this is what it was all about from Ukraine. They lured Ukraine into this promise of NATO, and which everybody understood that we'd never join. I was studying in Washington in the university in 2007, and we were told directly by a professor, Ukraine cannot join NATO because it will start a war. Like, it was common sense. Like, there are spheres of influence. The same thing with Canada or Mexico would join ODKB, or the Russian military alliance, or Chinese military alliance. You would have the U.S. Army come in and have a special operations of their own within a day. They would bombard the hell out of Mexico City or Ottawa. I would tell you that. Russia waited so long, begged, please do not get involved. Please stop. Let's negotiate. We'll give Ukraine to the EU, but not NATO. Let's talk about this. No, nobody listened. Everybody thought that Russia's weak. The Westerners watching too much movies think, oh, Russia's weak. They can have these old bad Russian guys with the bad accent that are going to fail. But it turned out that Russia was stronger than anybody else expected, and because the truth is on their side. That is also a big factor. These guys were fighting with basically fake news, politicizing everything, and Ukraine was always okay to Russia. Yeah, it was. They had some influence of nationalistic movements, but before even 2004, the first coup, the so-called Orange Revolution, everybody hated the radicals. If you would say pro-Bandera in Ukraine, you would say you'd be toxic. Anyway, even in a small village in central Ukraine, everybody hated, like, nobody for being pro-Bandera in 2003. You'd be toxified in any local village, even in Western Ukraine. But it all turned. They started to push this narrative, push that everything's okay, pushing that Bandera is a hero, small pieces by small pieces, definitely bulk, radical parties, the right sector, coordinated by the Security Service of Ukraine, changing people within the Security Service of Ukraine after the first coup. When Yushchenko came to power, you had the Security Service of Ukraine, you had a whole sector having FBI and CIA agents working in there. Basically, changing people, taking people, firing people who then will fight for their country. Statesmen, they would destroy statesmen within the service, and they would have nobody else in 2014 to protect the government. So that's why it was all fell apart, because it was pre-made. It was made to do so. It was a fake project. If Ukraine had a chance to get its real independence, because there was no country like Ukraine before. Look into the history. It was the Rus, then the territory of Ukraine was taken over by the Polish, the Poles and the Lithuanians, and then Ukraine came back to Moscow under the hetmans in 1654. And it started thriving because during the Lithuanians and Poles, Ukraine, they tried to Catholicize Ukraine, put Catholicism into Ukrainians' minds, but it didn't work out. The people on Ukrainian territory fought against it because they were under the Moscow Church for years and years, for more than 1,000 years. And this is what it's all about. We were always part or connected to Russia or the Moscow Empire before, and now then Russian Empire. It was all interconnected. We were all one under their rule for years and years, and we were interconnected. We were brothers. Now they said, "Oh, this was not never the case. It was all bad. Everything that you were taught before was propaganda by the Soviet Union, by the Russian Empire. It was all fake. It never happened. You were always Ukrainians. You were the ones who actually dug up the Black Sea, and even they were teaching in Ukrainian textbooks that Jesus is Ukrainian, that the French came from Ukraine." That all the Europeans came from Ukraine, like that we are the.
Wait.
That's what they're teaching.
They were teaching in textbooks that Jesus was from Ukraine.
Yeah, in Ukrainian textbooks, that he says they allegedly took some DNA tests and said that he is from Ukraine. He's not Jewish. He's from Ukraine. Yes, that's how they put into the minds of people that they are a better nation than anybody else. And when you put that in, that's Nazism. When you put that into the people's minds that you're higher up than somebody else, and then they control over that. Pride, Nazism, fake news, propaganda, teachings from the government, and from the outside, the Soros groups producing all those textbooks. Look into the textbooks that were produced in Ukraine and printed after it got some independence, especially after 2004 coup. Most of the textbooks on history, and not on math, but on history. Soros organizations funded them. Open Society funded those textbooks. They needed to brainwash Ukrainians. They needed this war. That's why the problem is Ukrainians bought this cheap shit information and they went for it. And the problem is that the Ukrainian politicians wanted to sell off to Americans. They were wanting to sell off. They were running and go to the U.S. Embassy, selling their souls out because they had their money in America. They wanted to flee to America. They wanted to have everything connected to the West, and that's it. They sold the country out. That's why we have this. Not just because of the West, but Ukrainians also were the problem of this. The Ukrainians who sold out to America. Actually, they were the U.S. Embassy wanted to buy me out when I came out with the truth against Ukrainian involvement in the U.S. elections. In 2017, the U.S. Embassy had people talk to me. Ken Toko was the political officer. He talked to me for a couple of hours and said, "Look, if you get your words back, we'll help you out. We'll get your citizenship or something like that. We'll support you. We will not destroy you politically. Just take your words back. Say you made a mistake." And then another couple of years later, they also approached me and actually advised me to do the same thing. And they said, "We'll give you something." Residency in the United States, something like that. So basically, there were people in with that kind of stuff. I never bought that stuff. That's why I'm under sanctions, and that's why I have a problem right now. But a lot of people in Ukraine, having the money and the possibility to fight for the country, they bought for that, and they sold their souls to Anglo-Saxon world, the Pan-Americana world, who are destroying Ukraine today, and they don't care. They'll all flee to America. They'll all flee. Where the former Minister of Defense of Ukraine is in Miami. His daughter bought a villa. I'm talking about Telizhenko. His daughter bought a villa in Spain for $10 million. That's where they are. They're not in Ukraine. They're not fighting. Where is the foreign minister of foreign affairs of Ukraine, Kuleba, who said we're going to fight with shovels with the Russians? We don't care. His family is in the West, is in the United States. He's teaching in Harvard, some project. So that's where he is. They're all bought off by America. This is what this war is about. This war is the deep state against Russia. Problem is, Ukraine is being used.
Andrii, just amazing. I am blown away by some of this stuff. And it's always like how a society breaks down is always fascinating to me. And to my point of view, it's always external influence. I mean, yeah, societies may crumble at some point, but for all intents and purposes, a lot of times it's external. Andrii Telizhenko, man, thank you for this. I always appreciate you joining me. I always appreciate your breakdowns. You give me a window into something that helps me understand what I'm looking at in a way that, it's kind of difficult to get from outside looking in. So thank you for this. Andrii Telizhenko, he's a Ukrainian whistleblower, former diplomat. Be safe, man.
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you to everybody. God bless.
Thank you. All right. Jesus, that is rough. Jesus was Ukrainian. Yeah, the breakdown is fascinating to me. And obviously it didn't take place by itself, right? It was external influence. Look, if you guys dig the content, you find yourself coming back here often. I have guests from all over the world, domestic and international. Support the content if you can. A like, a share. You can support PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, memberships, buy me a coffee, super stickers. There's so many of these things. I was about to say I wish they just had one, but it doesn't work that way. Super stickers, super chats. I like super chats because I like to read what the audience is effectively saying, even when they're taking the piss out of me. But there's also super stickers, there's memberships. All of those things help the content. All of those things help the show. You have my deepest appreciation for all the support that you give to the show. I often point out that the show is often demonetized just because of the subject matter that we cover on this show. Us talking about Epstein and pedophiles, for example, is probably going to get us demonetized. But again, it's something that's happening. I mean, reality should be a defense to that stuff, but apparently reality is not a defense to it. So if nothing else, like the video and share the video. Coming up is Chief Dennis Fritz. Dennis Fritz. What is his last name? Colonel Wilkerson. Colonel Wilkerson wasn't able to join us this week, but he will be available next week. But Chief Fritz was available. Usually I bring both of them on together because they have a really good dynamic back and forth in the way that they engage with subject matter. Hopefully he got my second email, and hopefully he will not go to the first 404 that Vanesssa went to the first time around. Yeah, man, those emails are ruinous. Those emails are ruinous. And it's one of those things where it's like, if those emails were outed when Donald Trump was running, could Trump have won the race? Meaning, instead of Democrats spending, I don't know, all of this time and energy, losing credibility, trying to put him in a cage, and coming up with all of these fanciful lawsuits and all of this other nonsense, those emails kills a campaign. How on earth do you have apex pedophile and you have emails where he's like, Donald Trump was hanging out with the victims for hours at my house? I mean, there are more, by the way. I didn't even get to hit all of them. Just so we are very clear, more of those emails will be coming out. For example, here's one. I've met some very bad people, none are as bad as Donald Trump. Not one decent cell in his body. That was another one that effectively came out with. Here's one, DD Geopolitics. They are a fantastic network. Right here. Here's another one. There will be more of these. Have one of your envoys asked to see the mortgage to Mar-a-Lago, cash from the Electrinatus Union, was the bag man. Later, he made an exec, or he made an exec at the public company, and a $30 million loan from the casino to Donald Trump backdated. This was Jeffrey Epstein effectively spilling the beans, I suppose, on how Donald Trump got his cash from Mar-a-Lago. His driver, Matt, was the bag man. Later, he met, I guess it's supposed to be met, an executive at a public company, and a $30 million loan from the casino to Donald Trump backdated. Yeah. Epstein apparently knew where the bodies were kept. Donald Trump, who had sworn for years that he had cut ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2006, received $30 million loan in 2012 from a casino tied to Epstein's finances, according to the newly released House Oversight emails. So the man who said he cut ties with Epstein, who had no relation to Epstein, was apparently getting money from that same Epstein in 2012. Like, this stuff is ruinous. This stuff is ruinous. It's like, why on earth did you waste all of that time trying to put the man in a cage? And by the way, I'm not one of the only people who realize that Donald Trump has effectively betrayed not just his base, but America as a whole. This is Nick Fuentes. He has given a diatribe against Trump, effectively saying Trump has betrayed us. Trump has betrayed us. What's wild to me is that it just doesn't work, man. And I don't even know how you make it work. But this process doesn't work. If ISIS, back in Jelani, takes over Syria, and ISIS gets betrayed by Jelani, like you have head choppers, people literally chop off heads, right? Who are out there murdering people as we speak. They get betrayed. What option do we have? I'm trying to give a spectrum of pointing out that the same people who are willing to crawl over hot glass for Sanders and feel like Sanders wouldn't be willing to do the same for them and capitulate. The same people who were crying, Jesse Jackson crying when Obama won that race because they believe a black guy has won it, so God damn it, it's going to be a new America. And Obama was the same politician as Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would imagine they felt betrayed. And on the other spectrum, ISIS leaders get betrayed by Jelani because of his association with Israel and Washington. Then what hope do we have, right? We don't chop off heads. What hope do we have? Nick Fuentes has come to the conclusion also, we have been betrayed. Talking about MAGA. I'm sorry, that's Vanesssa. Hold on, one second. Okay, I'll go to Nick later. Let me go to my guests first. We are joined, my man, extraordinary gentleman, Chief Dennis Fritz. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
I'm doing well. My apology to you for coming on. I had mixed up two things, and I said, "Oh Lord, I gotta go. I gotta jump on." And then
you're fine.
Yeah. Then I said, "Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry."
No, you're perfectly fine. I always appreciate when you can join me. Chief Fritz. He's retired Command Chief Master Sergeant. I don't know if you've ever played a video game called Halo.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so the main character, it's famous game, very famous. They even have movies about it. The series is fantastic series. The main character is named Master Chief, or was it Master? Yeah, Master Chief. So when I hear Chief Fritz, it always, I don't know, it brings back memories of the game. But Dennis Fritz, he's Command Chief Master Sergeant. I'm sorry, he is called Master Sergeant.
No, Command Chief Master Sergeant was my retirement.
But his character's named Master Sergeant, if I'm not mistaken. It's one or the other. But either way, Dennis Fritz, he's retired Command Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. He is a former director of the Eisenhower Media Network with a mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as the principal senior advisor to 4-star commanders at Pacific Air Force and Air Force Space Command. He also held additional duties as senior enlisted advisor to the commander of North America Aerospace Defense, or commonly known as NORAD. He is author of Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. And again, I know I say it every time you come on the show. I've had people on this show that have given that book very high accolades. And so definitely check that book out if you want to know how the United States gets embroiled into the war in Iraq by somebody who effectively was there. Thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. I always appreciate these conversations. I always appreciate your visits. I got to start with Ukraine. There are mass surrenders that are taking place now. I think there were 25 people who surrendered all at once in Minograd. Russia has surrounded Kupiansk. They've surrounded Pokrovsk. That noose around both of those are effectively tightening with the Russians entering Kupiansk. And within probably a week or so, Pokrovsk is going to fall. Now, what started off as this is a fortress city has turned into, not a big deal. It's like not a big deal if they lose Pokrovsk. That's what the media is now, this kind of copium that is taking place now that it's very clear that this logistics hub is effectively going to fall. And it's not just Pokrovsk. Seversk is another one that's going to fall. There are others, but it seemed like these are going to fall almost in domino fashion. And even the New York Times at this point is reporting that many of these people don't have water, food. There are hundreds of thousands of desertions that are taking place. This looks like an army that is effectively withering away. From your point of view, why can't, what is the leverage to compel, let's say, the U.S., and for that matter, even Europe, to bring this war to an end? Because I got to be honest, I haven't seen it. And I've asked many guests this question, and many guests who were gung-ho about, well, Trump is going to end the war. Trump is going to end the war. When I ask it in those terms, like, okay, well, what is the leverage for Trump to end the war? What is the leverage for Europe to end the war? They often come up with a blank. Do you have an answer for that?
Well, Jamal, what I would tell you is that it's a policy that goes all the way back to the so-called Cold War with the Soviet Union. The goal is to now control the former Soviet Union, now Russia, by way of weakening Russia. Now, you can go back to some of the conversations that we've had in the past, and I'm on record going back a year and saying that this was a war of attrition, that Russia was going to do exactly what it is doing now. It could have went on and it destroyed the entire Ukraine, a while back. And in regards to the United States, their goal is to not necessarily stop the war. As you've heard, Trump has said in the past, I can stop this war in 2 minutes and so forth, even before he came into office. This war would have never happened if it wasn't for me. Where you've heard me say before, there are just forces out there that, particularly in the United States, if you look at Lindsey Graham, for example, stating that the grain in Russia, the energy in Russia, our oligarchs, our billionaires here and in other places around the world, under the guidance of the U.S., goal is to control the entire world. That's not fabrication. That's fact. We want to make the entire world a capitalist, world, if you will. And who's on top of that capitalist world? The United States of America. Now let's go back. When you say, if we can stop this war, Congress could stop this war. Let's forget about Trump. Congress could stop this war. But when you have those that are funded by the military industrial complex, no, that's money. When we say we're providing Ukraine with weapons, well, guess what? Those weapons are made by us, and what? The military industrial complex makes money, who fund our Congress. So it's going to be hard for Trump, if you will, to stop this war, and they're going to continue until Russia actually takes over Ukraine. And then guess what? They're going to say, oh, this is Russia's deal all along. No, Russia's reason for the war, they were being surrounded by quote NATO. And as I've said in the past, we, the United States, have sympathy or empathy, I should say, for no other country's security needs and security interests. So that is the reason why. And it's like I say, Lindsey Graham is on record of saying, hey, we're not being killed, people in the United States of America, but Ukrainians are. And so there's your answer right there, simply, Jamar.
Basically, there is no leverage
no.
for the United States to stop the war.
It would have been stopped. Think about that. Yeah. Think about all the Ukrainians that have been killed. Now, the biggest thing I've been on record of saying, a war of attrition. Yes, Russia has lost a lot of forces. Yes, they have. But Putin, to prove his point, as all politicians do, we lost as you talk about my book, we lost 4,500 military men and women, in Iraq based on a lie. So think about that. So politicians, you look at the number of people that are dying in Russia, but by attrition, hey, they're willing to make that sacrifice for their quote, quote, security.
Yeah, Russia went in with 150,000 troops, give or take. Right now, they had, I think it was like 3-1 disadvantage from the standpoint of the Ukrainian military to the Russian military, and they were able to take 20% territory. Right now, Russia has over 700,000 men with like 30 to 40,000 joining up, volunteering each month. Ukraine is in a deficit each month in regards to the number of people that are effectively joining, with God knows how many desertions that are taking place, hundreds of thousands.
Right.
This is not this is math at this point, right? This is not
attrition.
Even like.
Remember I saying war of attrition.
Yeah.
Russia will win that, and they're doing it.
What do you say to people though who say that the Russians should have been more aggressive in prosecuting this war? That they should have, because Putin put in the directive very early on, low casualties. We don't want to deal with the political destabilization of having a huge number of casualties. And let's be honest, he may be looking at this idea of a potential third world war. Like, we don't know what NATO would do, right? We don't know what happens when Russia takes Kiev and how European leaders respond. We know they would be losing their minds, but we don't necessarily know how aggressive they would be in the sense of, we need to put troops in Ukraine. We don't know where they're going to go. And I would imagine the Russians don't know where they're going to go. And so part of this stuff may be taking precautions for a potential larger conflict that they may expect to pop off. This continues.
Yeah, no, I'm just giving you my opinion. I don't think that would happen because of the fact, guess what? Nuclear weapons would be thrown into the picture then. And so I really don't think that would happen. My personal opinion, I don't know, you heard me say before, I give you opinions, assumptions, and facts. My personal opinion, let's just use as rhetoric. If they take over Kyiv, they take over Ukraine, they're coming for you next. I don't believe that. You look at all the forces that Russia has exhausted already in just trying to take down, Ukraine. But like I said, they do have the rationale, which is a logical rationale. Hey, if you put NATO on our border, that is a true threat to us. We're surrounded, and we're not going to allow that. I don't think they want to, okay, we're going to become the Soviet Union again. No, they're protecting their interests. And once again, in my opinion, they're protecting their interests. And so I don't think there will be another, a widespread war, because if it does, let's go back to what Lindsey Graham said, and I think NATO feels the same thing. American troops are not dying. Ukrainian troops are dying. We are using them, unfortunately and sadly. We are using them. The so-called weaken Russia. Yes, you remember what I said earlier? They're losing troops, a number of troops. But Putin is willing to sacrifice that for the security of his nation, which is, he feels, their policy. It's about the security of our nation. And oh, by the way, Jamal, as you know, he warned us. Hey, that's a red line. He warned us. Now, I must tell you, we talk about opinions. Even when they were gathered at the border, back then, I never thought that he would actually, invade. I really didn't. But he showed us, hey, I'm serious about this. This is our security. So that must tell you how he felt that was a threat to him. Go ahead. You were going to make a point.
See, right there. It's that part. Like, that's the part that's always fascinating to me. I didn't think he would invade either. I was working at the radio station. Nobody at the station thought Putin would go in. And I realized, okay, we're getting this wrong. like we're drinking our cappuccinos, eating, croissants, looking at this like, yeah, he's not going to go in. Okay. Meaning there's a disconnect from, hey, you're surrounding me militarily. This is not a joke.
It's not a joke.
Analysts who are looking at it, thinking to themselves, yeah, he's not going to go in. Like, there's a disconnect. And that disconnect concerns me. Because you would hear European leaders like, yeah, he's showing the new Berezhnik, and he's showing the Poseidon, he's showing the Sarmat, and he's showing the Oreshnik, but he'll never use it.
Yeah. Hey, let me just say this, Jamal. Now, there were intelligence saying, I mean, that he was going to do it. There really was, but I thought it was rhetoric. So we did have people in government saying that he was going to go in, and they were warning us too. And so I just discounted, that intelligence, thinking it was just rhetoric by the U.S. So we did have people in, the Biden administration saying, "Hey, he was going in, really," and I discounted that.
Is Europe doing the same thing though? Meaning, is Europe looking at the situation in the same way that we were looking at it back then? And Europe thinks, yeah, if we put 10,000 French troops in, he'll never attack those troops.
But he said he would. Wait a minute. That's say there's a difference now. It shows you, as we said before, that he was not kidding. He takes that. I hate to give this example again, and I've given it before, and I'll say it again. We would lose our mind if there were Soviet. I'm sorry, I'm giving myself bad history there. If there are Russian troops on our border in Mexico, if we keep messing around with Mexico and all these other Caribbean countries, islands and so forth, we will see Soviet and Chinese troops on our borders. But if we had Russian troops in Mexico or Canada, we would lose our minds. We've already seen that in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So the Russians, I don't know why I want to keep saying the Soviet Union, but the Russians, because it's reminded me of that. Because of the fact it all started with the Cold War, with us trying to weaken Russia, which we did. And what did we do? We went around and bragged, "Oh, we won the Cold War. There's no longer no Soviet Union." Okay, then you get Putin to come along, Russia, who loves his country. Okay, you want to brag? I will show you we love our country too. And guess what? Our security is important to us too. And so just look at it from that perspective, that when he said he was going to do this, he did it because he really felt their security. Now, I don't think, like I said, I think sometimes it's rhetoric. You have to put stuff on the table and say, "Hey, we're thinking about putting troops, in Ukraine." Those troops will be destroyed. Now, going back to what you said, what got me started on this, if they do that, then this game is on. Okay, Russia's already said. It's almost like, let's use Israel, for example. What's good for the goose, good for the gander, as they say. Israel bombs Lebanon. They bombed Syria. When Assad was in office then, they said they were bombing them because weapons were coming in to them from Iran. Right. Likewise, Russia could use that as a president. Say, okay, we're going to bomb you in Ukraine, those troops. You're going to put those troops in harm's way. I don't think, Frank, they don't have no big military. They don't have no big, you talking about attrition. They don't have enough forces to lose, what they will lose. Now, let me go back to something else you said earlier, too, when you said how, Putin was prudent. And what do I mean by that? As I stated before, and we've seen it, some of the supersonic missiles that they have, if he so desired, like Israel did in Gaza, he could have totally destroyed Ukraine. But he didn't want to do that. He probably didn't want to put the bill of having to, build it back up. So, but he could have totally destroyed it. He was willing to make that sacrifice of the number of men and women that he lost in war, to defend their security, which he feels is a full-blown mission and objective he needs to do to protect his country and their integrity. And so I don't think, opinion-wise, that you're going to see France putting troops in, even Poland with their bluff. I don't see that, because guess what? If you do that, then you become part of that war. And Russia, as we know, have more nuclear weapons than anybody on this earth. And they will be used if you think you're going to take Russia down.
Yeah.
You take that one to the bank.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't see this expanding like you see. Let me ask it this way. From your point of view, ultimately, there's no push to end the war from the U.S. or from Europe's point of view, because these are Ukrainians dying. And that for all intents and purposes, Russia is going to be forced to take Ukraine and absorb it as a whole.
I don't think they even do that. Like I said, it's about their security. And as I don't even see that. I really don't.
Well, wait. Well, how does it stop then? If they don't absorb all of Ukraine, then something has to take place that allows the war to stop. What is the thing that allows the war to stop?
I think eventually, once again, we don't know. We don't have that crystal ball. But let me just say this again, Jamal. The gold which was never realistic. The goal was never for Ukraine to defeat Russia. It would never happen. Never happen. The goal was, key word, weaken Russia. Weaken. Now, have they done that? They've lost a lot of men and women in that. But if you look at the numbers, as you went over a few minutes ago, they were willing to make that sacrifice. And like I said, and they always have, no pun intended, the Trump card, but they always have that card of nuclear weapons. And so that's why go ahead.
But if the goal was to weaken Russia, that failed miserably. Russia went from a military of 150,000 to 700,000.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. A failed policy, a failed mission. Okay. They thought, once again, we could repeat the Cold War. You know, you had a person, Gorbachev, back in the day, you know, that, I mean, hey, he was willing to try to work with the United States of America. As we've talked before, Russia, when it became Russia from the Soviet Union, even wanted to join NATO. Think about that for a moment. They wanted to join NATO. We said no. Why? Our imperialistic policy. I mean, it's a fact. As I told you, I can give you assumptions. I can give you opinions and facts. Now I'm giving you facts. The sole reason is to weaken Russia. Don't believe me? Listen to Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the goal. It's not to win. It was never logical thinking for anybody to even assume that Ukraine could defeat Russia. So the goal was to weaken, like we did in the Cold War, weaken the Soviet Union. That's why I keep going back to the Soviet Union. It goes all the way back to that.
Dig into your crystal ball for a bit. How do you think this comes to an end?
I think eventually, I don't know. Once again, it's an opinion. I think eventually that Ukrainians will rise up and say, okay, hey, enough is enough. Zelensky, whether he's assassinated or overthrown or whatever the case may be, I think that's the only way it's going to end, or total defeat. And then, the crystal ball again, I don't think originally that was the Russians' goal of, taking over Ukraine or whatever. Now, they will take over that, some of the regions you talked about, the Donbass region, and so Russian-speaking Ukrainians, I think they will, take over that. But I think it'll end and it'll be negotiated. Wow, I hate to get into other politics. It's almost compare this. We had a government shutdown here in the U.S., and all of a sudden, which I got to tell you, I agree with most Democrats don't agree with. I mean, what do you want people to go without jobs and the government stay closed forever? Okay, people now saying, hey, what was all this for? What did the Democrats win? You still didn't get, the healthcare subsidies. Would it be just like this? Well, what was all this war? What did we get? Well, we got to destroy Ukraine with all the infrastructure. We got to destroy. What did we get? Nothing. So you're right. A failed policy. Other than somewhat, I give another example when we talk about the weakening of Russia.
Yeah.
President Trump has talked about, oh my goodness, all the killings, all the men and women that Russia has lost. He kept saying that. So that would be the only thing you can say. Yeah, the Russians lost a lot of men and women. But what was this war for? Did we weaken them? Somewhat. They did have to exhaust a lot of missiles and so forth. They definitely lost a lot of men and women and so forth. But the bottom line, it was a failed policy. And by the way, why do I call it a failed policy? Because our policy and NATO policy. You remember the war could have never started. We sent a guy named Boris Yeltsin, whatever his name, over from, the UK to tell Zelensky, hey, no, we got you back. Continue on with this war. It could have never happened. But what do? We pushed the war once again to so-called weaken Russia. And Russia was not going to have no part of that. We'll show you that we are serious, as you and I talked about a few minutes ago, not thinking that he was going to invade, but that tells you how serious he was about the security of his nation.
Yeah, Boris Johnson is, talk about a trash human being.
Yeah, I forgot his last name, Johnson. Thanks for helping me out there.
No, you're perfectly fine. I mean, he comes in as like, hey, we'll back you to the hilt. We're not going to give you security guarantees if you sign some kind of deal with the Russians, scuttle this deal, and 1 million dead Ukrainians later. hundreds of thousands of dead Russians later, here we are.
And Ukraine's infrastructure, which can be destroyed totally at any time.
Yeah, it's just what a catastrophe. Why was al-Jilani? Let's move to the Middle East for a bit. Why is al-Jilani, al-Shara, whatever you want to call him, why is he at the White House talking to Trump and defense officials and playing basketball with CENTCOM?
Yeah, I saw that too. You know,
just amazing.
I reminisce. You know, unfortunately, in this political world, Jamal, in my days of being a senior enlisted leader, let's say for instance, I would have been an advisor to the CENTCOM commander. Unfortunately, I would have been out there playing basketball too.
You'd have been playing basketball with him.
When I used to go and visit the troops, when I was in the Pacific and Space Command, when I would go out to the, whether it be Korea, Japan, whatever, I always set up a basketball game with the troops.
Did you?
Always, everywhere I went, I was scheduled, and they loved it too. I got the chief. I'm gonna cover the chief, and that was one of my jokes. I remember I was out in Okinawa, Japan, visiting the troops, and they were in a NCO academy class, teach them how to be leaders. And I said, hey, I want to who are all the basketball players? I want to take them out and play some basketball. Let the chief take them to the hoop, if you will. And guess what? I won, and I had probably one of my best games ever. And so I talked about that class. I know we're getting away, but I talked about that class. I was a guest speaker for that class that night. And I my opening joke, as always, when you give a speech, you have to give an opening joke. And the opening joke was, hey, look, I failed as your leader. My job is to protect you, defend you, and support you. And I failed because I went out there and abused 5 members of your class. And everybody's all sad. What did I do? What did he do? What happened? I said, I had the nerve to take him out on the basketball court and whoop the hell out of him. But anyway, going back to what you said, yeah, unfortunately, if I would have been in uniform, if I had not retired or resigned after that fiasco at out here in not Fort Belvoir, but the Marine Quantico base when Hezbollah brought all the generals and senior enlisted, that probably would have been my last job because I probably would have quit. When in fact, I know I would have. But anyway, going back to what you said, yes, it's the politics of the world we play. You talked about my book a few minutes ago, Deadly Betrayal, which is over my shoulder. You will see in there, once again, the goal. I know so I'm going to help you understand this and your audience understand this. All these wars in the Middle East, when we talk about us, having our imperialistic views, all these wars in the Middle East are all about Israel. Israel, Israel, Israel. So I am not surprised what is happening. Why? Because at the time, Assad was the enemy. They wanted to get rid of Assad because he would not deal with Israel. He will not deal with the United States of America. So you get this guy who, by the way, we were funding, if you will, and he defeats Assad. He becomes the leader. Now we got the person that we can talk with. Even though in the early beginning, Israel was still bombing Syria. But so, no, I'm not surprised. I'll give you another example for your audience to take a look at. If you go back and Google this, you will see that we went to war. We eventually removed Saddam, but there are pictures out there with Saddam when Saddam and Iraq was fighting Iran, where former, at the time, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld was over holding hands with Saddam. In fact, they were looking at a gun together. That picture's still out there. Saddam was a friend. Then he became the enemy. Why? Israel, Israel, Israel. So how did this tie in? The original goal was to take out Assad, who was an enemy to Israel, take out Saddam, who was an enemy. Israel, both are gone. Who's left standing, which you'll see in the book, Iran and the Ayatollah. Now, we removed Assad. We tell this guy, if we didn't want him in power, we could kill him. You remember we had a bounty on him. You remember that? We had a bounty on him. Yeah. So guess what? The goal, the objective is to find a friendly leader in Syria on behalf of Israel. And likewise, that was the goal in Iraq. But Iraq has not succumbed to that. They still have not signed a peace deal with Israel. So that's why I'm not surprised at this. 1 minute, this guy, we got a bounty on him. He's the enemy. The next minute, he does our bidding. He defeats Assad. Now we will reward him. And oh, by the way, I think if I don't remember, I know in decades, I don't think we ever had a Syrian, leader ever in the White House, at least for decades. And so, hey, that's his reward. He defeated our enemy, Israel's enemy, Assad, who's now in Russia.
Well, he was sitting there with Petraeus. Petraeus was like, "Hey, are you sleeping okay? You look a little thin, buddy."
Oh, yeah. That was the beginning of
it.
Yeah. Oh, we love you. Yeah. Hey, you all right?
That's just mind-blowing to me.
Well, hey, listen, Jamal, you got to understand our strategy and goals, imperialistic control. We have a friend in him now. Why? He took out the guy that we could not control, Assad.
But many people believe that they were never the enemy. And you get a lot of people from the Middle East who would say,
Syria?
Yeah, like
that's a fact.
No. Assad. Yes. It was being run
Ho. I'll give you the classic example. How this stuff works. There's somebody named Gabby that's running all our intelligence right now who met with Assad in Syria. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's many people that didn't see, but it's all about Israel, Jamal. Okay? We couldn't control Assad. And so that was the only thing we had against Assad. Listen, I'll say one other thing. None of these folks, whether it be, and I'm just getting tired of all the rhetoric now, Saddam was no threat to us. Assad was no threat to us. And ready for this? Iran is no threat to us. It's about control. And so because they will not succumb to us and our pressures, we're going to take them out. Regime change, what give us the right and authority to think we can go in Venezuela and control and do regime change? Likewise, I'm on this bandwagon now, fool us once, shame on them, United States government and Iraq. Fool us again, shame on us, Iran having nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Venezuela's fool us again if we go to war with Venezuela, the stupidity of us to come to these lies. Venezuela's a threat to us. All the drugs that are coming in. Oh, okay, Mexico. Okay, China. Okay, but we want to use that as an excuse to go in and attack Venezuela? No. It's about control. And guess what our government said? Even Trump has said, listen to your own ears. Wow, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves you can ever imagine. We need to control that. It's time for war. But what's going to be the rationale? Well, we got all these drugs coming in here. Maybe that could be the rationale. Give me a break.
I guess I want to stay on al-Jilani just for a bit.
Okay, sorry about that. I just
no, you're perfectly fine. You are perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember when the United States was claiming that, oh my God, they're terrorists in the region, and we need to invade in order to deal with the terrorism issue. And there was a point where the terrorists get beat back by Moscow, Syria, and Iran to Idlib. And as they get beat back to Idlib, the U.S. comes out and says, we will effectively destroy the world if you attack Idlib. Now, the UN at the time said there are like 40, 50,000 terrorists that are camped out in Idlib province. And a deal was made, I believe it's called Astana Agreements, that effectively froze the conflict. And people mistakenly believed that a frozen conflict was the end of the conflict. It was not, obviously, because eventually those terrorists came screaming out of Idlib and knocked over the government of Syria. The fact that the United States was willing to defend Idlib with 50,000 terrorists gives an impression that the United States was effectively backing and working with those terrorists, being led by al-Jilani. Meaning, was al-Jilani really an enemy? Was he really somebody that the United States was against? Or was he our guy?
Hey, listen, here's how I try to explain things. I try to use examples. And let me just go back and say, sometimes we can assume, that your audience or any audience understand everything that we're saying. There's some that listen to you and understand foreign policy. And when we were talking about Assad, for some of your audience may not, Assad used to be the leader of Syria, okay?
Yeah, right.
Now, with that said, I'm just giving you a clap example to use as an example for your audience to say this is not unusual. 2 examples. What's best in our interest for our imperialistic goals? We once supported and funded bin Laden.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a moment. Let that be for your audience a fact, not an assumption, an opinion. We funded him against the Soviet Union and Russia at the time. Let's take a look at Israel. Through Qatar, Israel helped fund Hamas. Think about that for a moment. So, as I stated earlier, we supported Saddam over Iran. And so none of this is a surprise. We will fund and do anything that will meet our strategic goals and our financial goals. And so we create enemies. Then we make them friends if they're going to succumb to what we want out of them. So no, this is not a surprise at all. That's how we operate. So I gave you two examples. Bin Laden, allegedly the leader that destroyed and was part of 9/11. Previous to that, we funded him. We supported him. Hamas, Qatar, Israel funded Hamas. Now they became the enemy. Always the enemy, out front, but we were funding them. So no, that is no surprise to us. We got the guy in Syria now that we can work with. Hopefully will become, which I don't see, like in Iraq, I doubt that would ever happen. But of course, they want to somewhat try to force him to become a part of the Abraham Accords and so forth. And so we'll see what happens. So that was his reward coming to the White House. No surprise to me. Our people need to understand that's how our foreign policy work.
Let's move to Venezuela for a bit. I want to play a clip for you. This clip came out before these attacks took place by the Trump administration. Listen to what she says here. This is astonishingly honest. And I always say I like to know my monsters. Like, meaning I prefer the honesty of it as opposed to the hiding and everything else. She says the quiet part out loud.
You have heavy crude. It's so rich in resources. It's off the charts rich. And they have a lot to be proud of. And our competitors and adversaries also know how rich in the resources that this region is. 60% of the world's lithium is in the region. You have heavy crude. You have light sweet crude. You have rare earth elements. You have the Amazon, which is called the lungs of the world. You have the 31% of the world's fresh water. It's so rich.
She's talking about Venezuela, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And she is effectively saying the quiet part out loud. Like, and at one point, she points out it is a national security issue for the United States to secure those resources of someone else's country, which is mind-blowing. Like, you said, they're like, what? Say that again? Like, how are you arguing that it is national security for the United States to secure the resources in somebody else's country? Can another country say that? Can China say, hey, it's the national security of China to secure the United States' natural resources? We don't like the fracking.
It is in the genes of the United States of America that they inherited from the United Kingdom. Okay? It is in our genes. We're supposed to control everything. Likewise, I'll go back. It should not be no surprise to our people. It's open. Our eyes should be open now. We should be woke, if you will. It goes all the way back to Smedley Butler, the Marine general, for your audience, who told us that was his mission. I was not defending my country. I was going out there and taking those resources for our companies. Okay.
Yeah.
She said the quiet part out loud. So did Trump. So did Lindsey Graham. When you talk about Ukraine, look at all those resources. Oh, by the way, you remember when Zelensky came, we want all their minerals in order to give you peace guarantees, security guarantees. You remember that? That was part of Zelensky. We want all your minerals. Okay. Anytime we're getting ready to go to war, just think about minerals. Just think about energy. Think about that. Let's look at Africa, for example. Now we want to go into Nigeria. Why? Oh, well, they're killing Christians. Well, look what's happening in Israel. Christians are spitted on. That's a fact again in Israel. Okay? Why? We want to control Africa. Why? Because guess what? Africa is the richest continent on this earth. Not their people, but the resources they have. It's in our genes. Not your and my genes, but the genes and the makeup of the United States of America, which they inherited from the United Kingdom. And that's what it's all about. Any of these wars, you take this to the bank, whether it be the Korean War, whether it be the Vietnam War, definitely Iraq War, never about the defense of our country. Think about this. I ask your audience once again to use your own minds. What country in this world, other than China, based on attrition, it's what's happening between Ukraine and Russia, can actually invade our country? The only way somebody can invade our country is by nuclear weapon. It won't be an invasion. It'll be, just mass killing then. No country right now can invade our country. None. The only reason I said possibly China because they have 1 billion people, attrition.
Right.
We can't bomb all them getting over here. So that's the only way.
Right.
But none of these wars have been about the defense of our country. I'll give you another example. We just celebrated Veterans Day. And I got to give my son credit because he made me laugh a little bit. I cringe. I cringe because all this is about, how can I say, just rhetoric that the government created. I cringe. I really mean this. When people come up to me, and many of veterans are saying this now, thank you for your service. And I say, don't say that because our military men and women have been abused. It's never been about the defense of our country or we're serving our country to defend us. No, go back and tell your audience to read Smedley Butler. This is a racket. We're used by our government for our billionaire oligarchs who control the resources of the world. Now, how do you tie that into our national security? Because of the fact we're providing the security of our oligarchs and billionaires, oil companies, manufacturing companies in the military industrial complex to continue to make their billions. And that's what these wars are about. And that's a fact. Never been. Use your own mind. What country can invade us? Not
What's
one
wild
country.
about it, she seems to know it.
Say
Like
again?
she seems to have internalized it, right? Like
Who's
she's not
that?
unaware. She's very clear. Hey,
Oh, she's
they got
very
resources.
clear. Very
Yeah.
clear. Like I said, she's not the only one. Trump is very clear. Lindsey Graham is very clear. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what you just heard it yourself. A 4-star general. Yeah. So, I tell you, the great thing, Jamal, whether it be what's happening in the Middle East, we're being woke now. When I say you and I have always been woke and understood what was going on with our foreign policy and so forth. I am so glad that the rest of the United States of America and more so our young people are becoming more and more aware of our foreign policy. Think about all the billions of dollars that we have spent on foreign entanglements. That in fact, let me just say this again. I said this on your show before, and I find I'm just so happy when I hear even my family members and other people are saying, I don't care what your politics are, but when you're saying something that's right, I'm going to support you. And like I said, I'm on the Marjorie Taylor bandwagon right now, regardless of her other stuff, because she's telling the truth and more people are seeing it. And it takes people like her, it takes people like Tucker Carlson to get the others, so-called in politics, on the other side to understand we are pitted against one another so our oligarchs can continue to make billions. And she's telling the truth about these foreign entanglements. Think about the amount of money we have spent on these wars based on lies that healthcare wouldn't be a problem. Why are we willing to spend billions of dollars on wars and we allow it to happen, and then yet we let our politicians pit us against healthcare? And let me just tell you what I told a group of veterans last week as we were starting to come across, hey, Veterans Day, thank you for your service and all that. I say, what a shame. What a shame when they expect us in the military. Listen to what I'm about to say, audience. They expect us in the military to go off and give our lives in defense of our country to save the lives of the American people. We spend billions of dollars to do that. We exhaust lives in doing that, 4,500 men and women killed in the Iraq war. But yet, we won't pay money to build schools for more doctors and nurses to save Americans and their health from dying when nobody has to die to save those people.
Yep.
Think about that for a moment. If we had more doctors and nurses, invested in more schools, they have more doctors and nurses, or, you ready for this? Legal immigrants as doctors and nurses to come over here, it will be less than all the billions of dollars we're spending in war, and we'll not have to sacrifice any doctor's life to save a fellow American citizen.
From your mouth to God's ears. Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears. Chief, always appreciate you, man. Always.
Well, I'm so sorry if I rambled this time, but I just wanted to get a lot off my chest.
You did not. You did fine. You did perfectly fine. The audience loves you. I always love it when you join me. No, man, I really appreciate it. Dennis Fritz, he's retired Command Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. He is former director of the Eisenhower Media Network with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as principal senior advisor to 4-star commanders at Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held the additional duty as senior enlisted advisor to commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. He is author of Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq, and apparently a badass basketball player. Apparently a badass basketball player. My man, you have a good one, okay? Thank you for this.
And likewise, and thanks for having us. It's always an honor and pleasure to be with you, Jamal.
It's always an honor and pleasure to have you. You be safe. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic guess. Fantastic guess. Listen, a badass basketball player. Imagine getting beat and then having a speech where he's like, I did a horrible disservice to beating the hell out of X number of people playing basketball. I would do that at chess, so I don't blame him, right? I would do the same thing. Shout out to him. Shout out to all of my guests, actually. Vanesssa Beeley gave an amazing breakdown on the show today. Andrii Telizhenko, again, another amazing breakdown. And Master Sergeant. God, that's a badass thing. It sounds so hard-ass, right? And maybe it's because I'm so used to Halo, the television series. It's so good. The television series is so good. In season 2, there is a deconstruction of that character that is great. It is fantastic. Meaning the first season was good. The second season was just off the charts. Great. It is something, man. Like Thor is another really good example of that. Deconstructed in Thor Ragnarok. The next Thor after that sucked. Sometimes the person's their success is too much. They're like, hey, this worked the first time around. Let me do something similar. It's like, no, dude, it worked because you deconstructed the character. It worked in that sense. Like where Thor loses his hammer. Okay, well, Thor, what is Thor without his hammer, right? He's emasculated. He's humiliated. He's put through all of these trials and tribulations in order to become, something more of what he actually is. Or even in, I think it was Ted Rawl who said he hated Marvel movies. Infinity War. If you're blowing stuff into space, or you are sending the best of humanity, Infinity War goes into space. It's that good. The deconstruction of Thor in that is fantastic. Thor has the opportunity to kill Thanos, but Thor wants to showboat. And so instead of actually killing Thanos, he injures him badly to talk shit to him just before he kills him, giving Thanos the moment to erase 50% of the globe. And Thor is pained by guilt, and the guilt transforms him into Fat Thor. Oh, it's so good. That's so good. That's so good. That's so good. It was okay. It was better than okay. Halo was better than okay. It was better than okay. And then finally you get Captain America, where everybody and their mama, even if you don't watch comic books, knows Captain America's thing is Avengers Assemble. And they withhold him saying that for a decade. For a decade. They wait 10 years. And then finally, when it all comes to the thing with all of the people, you get all of Earth's heroes, quote unquote. And he's like, Avengers Assemble. And he goes with Thor's hammer and kicks some ass. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. No, man. I thought Halo was good. I thought Halo was better than Just Okay. I thought it was really good. I thought it was better than Just Okay. I am reading Pandora's, what is it called? Pandora's Box. Where's my phone? What's the name of the book? It's called Pandora's Star. I'm reading that now. By, what is it? Hamilton, Peter F. Hamilton. I got so accustomed to Cixin Liu in his books that, again, authors of different worlds. And when you're going from, let's say, a Chinese author to an American author, there's a switchover as a cultural difference between the two. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain. Anyway, it's actually a good book. His world creation is other level. Like he is just world creation is a whole nother level. Let me go to chat. Let's go to chat. Laugh 66, Vanesssa Beeley is most important journalist on the West Asian issues. All should follow her work. Vanesssa is fantastic. Vanesssa is fantastic. She's been nice enough to have me bug the hell out of her when I would text her and stuff like that. I read the Three Body. It was good. Yeah, Three Body was good. Yeah, Vanessa's great. Vanessa's a really good guest. It's not like they're a goalie for basketball hoop. Who's going to get overwhelmed with an unlimited basketball? What? What? No morph, irregular guy who could change his appearance to anyone. You're thinking of Plastic Man. Yeah, Plastic Man could change his appearance. Well, he could become anything, kind of. Three Body Problem is an anti-communist, anti-China. It is not anti-China. It's not anti-China. Get out of here. It's China. I mean, like, the Mao Revolution and everything else that effectively took place. Look, man, if you lived through that and you went through what the character went through, it's just history. It's like saying a book about slavery is anti-American. It's just history. There's not a way around it. It's just history. It's kind of an is what it is thing. At least that's the way I took it. I took that book as that book was China. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say politically, for example. In our politics, we have 2-year cycles for House of Representatives, 4-year cycles for Congress. For the presidency. What is it? Is it 8-year cycles for Senate, I think? So or 4-year cycles for Senate. So what you're effectively saying is that within 4 years, your Congress changes and your president change, potentially. And you're on a hamster wheel, continuously trying to maintain agenda. How can you maintain an agenda when everything in the BRICS is against you maintaining a particular agenda? Typically, the president loses his coalition in the first midterm. So within 4 years, the president's agenda is effectively over with. So whatever the president wants to get done, he has to get done immediately. Because all things being equal, he's going to lose his coalition. That's assuming he even had a coalition to begin with. How do you get anything done? Like, how do you actually have a 8-year, 12-year, 20-year agenda in that context? You don't. You just don't. Cixin Liu in that book is talking about political coalitions, especially Wandering Earth. Wandering Earth's political coalition went for, like 1,000 years? Like some insane amount of time? And yeah, there was political fracturing and everything else with terrorists and belief sets that the moon or the sun wasn't going to explode and all this other stuff. But you're still talking about a political coalition that's going for like hundreds of years. Even in three-body, you're talking about a political coalition that went for like centuries because it had to. I'm saying that's a Chinese perspective. Like that is in the BRICS, a Chinese perspective. Because no American author is going to write about a political coalition lasting 50 years, 100 years. Couldn't conceive it. It's not in our minds, right? It's not the way we think, because that's not the way our reality is structured in regards to our political affairs. We have conflict is in the BRICS, in the way that we operate. It's if there's a way to get a political advantage by destroying something, you're going to get the political advantage by destroying something because you want to win. Even if it's to the detriment of everything else, you'll do it. Sanders, yeah, he looks at it differently, obviously, but that is to his own detriment. Because if you needed to burn shit down in order to win, you should have burned shit down in order to win. That means you don't want to win. I'm saying, like, that book is China. Even the stuff that is said, the way that they act, the points of view in many respects that they ended up with. Yeah, human beings are human beings anywhere you go. But there are philosophical themes in that book that go beyond just random character doing X. It goes into philosophical thinking of those characters, for those characters even come to the conclusions that those characters came to. No, I think the book is China. I don't think the book is anti-Chinese. I don't buy that. Yeah, I don't buy that. One last thing before I go. Nick Fuentes is getting shit wrong when he's talking about Joe Biden winning and Trump winning and all this other stuff is nonsense. But what he does get right is that he has been betrayed. And I'm glad he noticed it. He's like, Trump has done great for the white movement. but he was never real about MAGA. I'm glad you get that. Trump is like the white man's Obama. And it's funny that Nick Fuentes has come to that conclusion and has gave this stinging, I guess, monologue, if you want to call it that, to make the points clear that we have been betrayed. We have been betrayed. Oh, where's that clip? 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 By the way, this is Trump being asked about the Epstein emails that were released. Hey, Trump. It seems like you're a pedophile. Do you have anything to say about you being a pedophile and working with and, being in association with a pedophile? Hey, anything to say about that? Anything to say about that?
Mr. President, can you respond to these Epstein emails that were released today?
Nope, nothing to see here. Nope. Somebody ask a question.
Can you respond to these Epstein emails?
Any questions? Anybody got a question? Any questions? That looks bad. That looks very bad. How do you not respond to that, considering everybody and their mama is talking about it? How do you not respond to it? You've been associated directly with a pedophile. Now, you could say, well, he's just making it up in the emails. You can make that case. You can make that argument. I don't know how many people are going to buy that argument. Epstein didn't write those emails with the notion that the emails was going to be shared to everybody. When he's sending a direct email to Ghislaine Maxwell, he's not sending that email to Ghislaine Maxwell thinking, one day, all of this will be exposed. He's not thinking that. It'd be very weird if he was thinking that, right? Do you write emails thinking to yourself, one day, this email will be exposed. And I will be able to fuck somebody over when it's exposed. Who thinks that when they're writing an email? I don't know anybody who thinks that when they're writing an email. Like the most cynical person in the planet, I don't think thinks that. Like, I'm writing this email, and one day when I'm dead, it would fuck over somebody because it will be exposed to the world. Who thinks that? Do you write your emails like that? Do you think him writing an email to Ghislaine Maxwell, he was thinking behind the scenes, one day I'm going to F over Trump in this? I don't buy that premise. Granted, that's not an argument that Donald Trump made, but I don't buy the premise. If he does make that argument, which is the argument that you would basically have to make. Arise for Fries. Vanesssa was great. You should talk to Eva Bartlett. Have I ever spoken to Eva Bartlett? I think I've spoken to her once. I don't know if I still have her contact information, though. That is the Canadian woman. Very, well, I was about to say very attractive. If I remember correctly, if it's who I'm thinking about. But yeah, I think she's Canadian. I think I've spoken to her once. I don't know if I still have her contact information. Yeah. Not a bad suggestion, Arcane Eclectic. Not a bad suggestion at all. I'll see if I still have her information. Stop the denial over Epstein being alive. Epstein, look, I think he's dead as a doornail. I think it was in the best interest for a lot of people for him to be dead, which makes me think he's most likely dead. Eva Bartlett's no time for BS. Oh, really? Really? Oligarchy added to the list of FIC derivatives, financial industrial complex. Yeah, I guess you could call it that. I don't know how many people are going to know what FIC means, but fair enough. Fair enough. She has very low tolerance. See, I haven't seen her work lately. Vanesssa, I see every so often. I haven't seen Eva's stuff lately. Listen, she has no time for BS. She's not taking any shit off of anybody. Go, girl. You go, girl. You go. FIC, MIC. Yeah, I remember her. I remember some of her work. She used to. Yeah, I remember some of her work. She used to cover Syria. She was Canadian. She used to cover Syria. You would think as a Canadian, she would be more inclined to put up with people's shit, but I don't know why I think that. Rab 865. Can you have someone to talk about what's happening in Sudan? I will ask David Houdan. He gave one of the best breakdowns of Syria that I've come across online. His breakdown was fantastic, utterly phenomenal. And so I can see what's taking place lately. They asked Marco Rubio a question on Sudan, if I remember correctly. And he said something to the effect of, we know who's arming Sudan or the RSF, and they better stop it, whatever threat he effectively threw out. Sounds like one of the people that you're effectively supporting, meaning one of the countries, is arming the RSF. You feel some kind of way about it, so you just don't want to out the country. If it was somebody who the United States was not backing and supporting, he would have just said the name of the country. But he probably wants to avoid some kind of diplomatic kerfuffle, in which case he puts it in a euphemism. So there's that. Apparently, there are a lot of people who are invested in the Sudan war. It's not just one or two. And Israelis are involved in Sudan also. I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, would be shocked. So yeah, I'll check for David next week. I wanted to give him a rest because, it's like you bring people on constantly. There's some people who are perfectly fine with coming on constantly, back to back that way. Not everybody is. Many people have their own lives. And I know for myself, right? Like you do a show, you may do somebody else's show every random blue moon, but it's not, even if I was asked every day, I would be hard pressed to say yes, especially since a lot of your time is making your own show. So I would ask him. He's doing an online platform that he is in charge of, and that he's been bringing on guests and people to do almost like a radio show. That's not really a bad idea, though, is it? Like, you have a channel and you allow other voices to be on your channel. You can create like a network. I mean, I'm only doing the show 3 hours a day. If there was somebody who was doing it at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, etc. It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea at all. Mid-press people are reporting on Sudan. Are they? Are they? I don't suppose Dr. Leon would change his name of his channel from Connecting the Dots to Connecting the Stinking. I don't suppose he will. No, I don't suppose he will. I think he will be hard pressed to do that. I don't suppose he will do that. Connecting the Stinking Dots. But see, I don't know anybody from Mid-press. That's the rub. I wish I did. They do good work. I don't know anybody from there. Yeah. Michael Hudson is really good too. He's really good. I've asked him to come on the channel once or twice. He's never said yes. He's never said yes to me. I guess I can reach out to him again. Like, hey man, I got 72,000 people. Would you like to join? He often shows up with Richard Wolff on some other channel. But yeah, I see him every rain to blue moon. But look, we have come to the end. We've come to the end. He's a nice guy. Yeah, he's not bad. He's a really great guy. Reach out and make new friends. I try. I swear to God, I try. I've tried to get Andrii, what is his name? Martiamo or something. I've tried to get Dr. O. I've tried to get, there's a really good guy that Judge Napolitano has on the show that is a fantastic analyst. He used to be a diplomat. And I don't know if he still is a diplomat. He has some age on him, but he has some of the best analysis I've come across. He was very polite and said, no. Have you tried to get Alex Jones? I have not. Alex Jones is a lunatic. I have not. Martin Yananov. Yes, that's his name. That is his name. Have you tried to get Danny Haiphong? I have not. I have not. Oh, have you had Danny? Yes, Danny was on the show. Danny was on the show at one point. Yes. Sydney Sweeney. Oh, God, I would love to have her on the show. Chaz Freeman. That's his name. Arcane Eclectic. Yeah, Chaz Freeman. He is a fantastic analyst. He is great at his job as an analysis. Alistair Crook is another really good one. I haven't reached out to Alistair Crook, but he's damn good too. Those are probably two of the best that Napolitano has on the show in regards to accuracy and just sublime intellectual discourse of explaining issues. Both of them are just fantastic. I don't know who that is, John Crawfeather. I don't know who Philomena is. We need new people to raise his numbers. Yes. Nico House. I haven't had Nico on the show. I haven't had Nico on the show. He was on the radio show. But I haven't had him on the show. Chaz is a go. Yeah, Chaz is phenomenal. Chaz Freeman is just great. What is it? Napolitano himself. Give him a break. I love Napolitano. His show is great. I haven't said anything bad about Napolitano. Yeah, I haven't seen anything bad about Napolitano. He has some really good guests that go on that show. It gets a bit repetitive if I had any criticism, but I think that's the nature of the beast. And it works. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing something wrong in regards to this show. I don't think the audience cares about domestic politics, which kind of sucks because I live here, right? And maybe because it feels like nothing gets done on domestic politics. Even for me, it feels like there's a repetitiveness. It's almost like if you were Randall Singer, you have a hit song, and you write a song about love, loss, pain of some kind of breakup, this romance that you had with some chick that you've known for an hour, that was the most important thing in the world to you when you were 17. It's like, this is the most important relationship that would ever take place in the world, in the universe. And I must write a song about it. And you write this emo song about it. And it's a hit. And you sing it once. And you put all your feeling into it. Every pain, every angst, every betrayal. She pulls out a knife. You pull out a knife. You say, I stab myself in the chest and bleed all over you and apologize for bleeding over you. Like it's one of those relationships. What does that look like when you've sung that song for 3 years straight? What does it look like? Like the first time you sing that song, you're putting all of your passion into it. But every stage that you go on to that wants to hear you sing that song, every stage that you do for 20 years, what is it to sing that song? I often think, like, even musical artists, right? Like, the reason that they changed the songs around is probably get sick of singing the same song. It's just wild. Have you heard of the Anna Kasparian show? I hear from right-wingers that she has finally woken up since she dropped the progressive label. No, I've not really. I mean, she does great on gossip. The Young Turks is not a show I watch in general. Tucker would never come on the show. Tucker would never come on the show. That's what happened to DMX, Rough Rider, Anthem. He hated it up there. Yeah, right. It's like you sing the song. The song is good. The song is great, even. And the first 5 times you sing it on stage, you're hyped up. The audience is hyped up. And then you sing it for a year. Then what? How do you gin up that emotion, right? How do you gin up that feeling, that energy that you had when you first did it? It's just, God, man, it just would suck. It would suck. It would be hard to sing the same song. Yes, 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 yes. Take on the Hodge twins at chess. Who are the Hodge twins? Who are they? I don't know who they are. I would beat the shit out of them. I don't know who they are, though. Who are the Hodge twins? I'll look them up. Look, I told you, I've wanted to have a YouTube chess tournament. I would love to have a YouTube chess tournament. I would love it. By the way, I was going to the clinic here the other day, and I had to wait just because I had just got to the location. And I go walking around Kathmandu. And I'm walking. I'm looking for a store, because like a coffee shop or something like that. I wanted to get something. And Nepal, the way their shops are set up, they do have stores every so often, but mostly they have booths. So it's like, let's say this booth may have kitchenware. This other booth may have things for dogs. This other booth may have pharmaceuticals. This other booth may have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm walking, not finding a coffee shop. I turn the corner, walking. And what do I see? Are people playing chess. Oh, my heart just erupts. And of course, got my headphones on. I get closer and closer. And finally, I'm watching the game. And I just watch. And I see one guy is about to lose. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I can get into this. Like, meaning, because oftentimes in chess, you have a round table. And so you can't just show up and just expect to get into the game. The guy loses. They shake each other's hands. It's like, oh, yes. Chess tradition. At the barbershop, they used to say, shake the man's hand, tell him good game. That was a rule, right? Informal rule, but it was a rule. Shake the man's hand, tell him good game. Win or lose, shake the man's hand, tell him good game. They shake hands. One guy gets up. And he says, he offers, but like, yes. Headphones down, yes. Shake his hand. Where are you from? The U.S. The U.S. America. I'm from America. Oh, okay, America. Okay, fair enough. And we play. And I'm slightly nervous, right? Because you're a foreigner. But I must kick ass for America. And I dominate. beat the guy, next guy sits down, dominate. Beat the guy. Now at this point I have to go because I'm late. I'm very late, right? I'm like 20 minutes late. And I'm saying, all right. I was like, hey guys, thanks. And he's like, no. The next guy comes in, a guy who lost first time, he wants to play again. He gets crushed. Now, I would tell you, your best chance of beating me is the first game. My wife's dad, same thing. Him and I play. He has a chessboard up when we visit his house. He loses, but barely. He was stronger than I thought. Every other game, he gets crushed. It's not even close. Because at that point, it's like, oh, I guess I have to play serious. I have to be, I can't fuck around. Your best chance of beating me is first game. After the first game, you're not going to win a game. And it felt great. Like, the thing is, it's a universal thing. I did get my ass kicked in Indonesia. The first game, I won. The second guy I played, I think I beat him that game. But it was close. Like, when you're playing Blitz, there's some people who you play in Blitz where you feel like you're taxing yourself. You're playing at your extreme. Now, I typically play on the computer. I haven't played in person for a while. So playing in Indonesia was the first time I played in a long time, like over the board, which is different than playing online. Because there are more mechanics that you have to deal with when you're playing in person. And just your vision of the board is a little bit different in person than it is when you're playing online. If I played more, I would be at my same strength that I'm online. I think I'm online at like 2,100. 100 points from a master. I always like to point that out because fucking awesome. That is a morsel of what I used to be, which always sucks for me because it's like, God, man, how was I ever that strong? But whatever. It's like this mountain strength. But the first guy I played, I beat him pretty thoroughly. The second guy I played, I felt like I was playing at the edge of my strength. I've experienced it before, but I experienced it before when I was at my best. And I was playing this guy who was rated 2,300 or something at Blitz. And I always felt when I was playing him, I was playing at the edge of my strength. It was like, there was no way to dominate. The best that you could do is, if you're going to win it, it's going to be in this kind of firefights, because him and I had a similar style of play at the time, where we would get into these just wild tactical fights and over the board. And of course, if you're playing like that, you better be at your best, because otherwise you're going to fuck up and drop pieces. This felt like that, but at a much lower level. It was just weird. But God, man, it was so much fun. Oh, so much fun, so much fun, so much fun. So much fun. All right. I am going to call this a day, because we are talking about chess at this point, and I don't think anybody else cares about this. By the way, there is a chess championship taking place. Yeah, Garland comes on all the time. Garland is away right now, though. He should be back next week. He is having a ball. I don't want to expose it if he hadn't exposed where he is, so I'm not going to do that. But he is having a ball where he is right now. Favorite player, Macau Tao. Easy, Macau Tao. His book is one of the best chess books that you would ever read and ever find on chess. He is so good. He's so good. Macau Tao. Capablanca is boring. I'm sorry. And I don't mean that poorly. When I was younger, I picked up Petrosian's book, and I picked up, there was another book, Petrosian, Kappa. I don't know if I had Kappa's book, but you can always find his games. And Karpov's book. And I was like, God, man, these books are so fucking boring. And then as I got old, I was like, these books are so good. Go figure. Macau Tao, he had kidney issues, smoked, drank. They used to say there is no way that a man who plays like this could ever become champion, until Macau Tao became champion. And the guy that he beat to become champion was one of the most technical players in the history of the game, Botnovic. Macau Tao plays what they call happy-go-lucky chess. That's the way they described it. If Macau Tao was around the time where they had computers, he would have got crushed. But a normal man, normal human being, he would pose so many difficulties in the way that he played. And it's not that it was perfect, but you as a human being who's sitting on a board with a time limit that has worked through what he is presenting you with inevitably fucks up. And that's what would happen. Kasparov has one of the most, is probably the best player that's ever lived. Kasparov is a dick politically. He's out of his fucking mind politically. In chess, greatest who ever lived. He has some of the most complex games that you would come across. His game is just hard to analyze. Tal is kind of like that, but in a different way. Tal, there are games that Tal has played where he is setting fire to multiple parts of the board simultaneously. And you're like, what the fuck is happening right now? And the guy's position just withers away. Like, it's very wild to analyze his games. Like, I've seen games where he has sacrificed so much stuff where he only had a queen, and then he uses the queen to effectively make the guy using his own pieces as a thing to make the guy. He just has a way of attacking that is breathtaking. I've never seen anybody play a game in that way, where they set the board on fire that way. Yeah, Makato, easy. As I got older, Karpov's books became fascinating reads, and Petrosian books became fascinating reads. All of these are radically different styles, though. Karpov and Petrosian would strangle you to death. It's like, I'm going to make this move to prevent this guy from doing that. And then after a while, it's like, okay, that guy has no moves. And you find yourself in this position where you're like, shit, man. Like, I felt that way when I was playing this Grandmaster. I was at a chess tournament. I screwed up on like move 3. I guess I was nervous playing the guy and dropped a pawn early in the game. And I felt like over and over again, anything that I planned was snuffed out. And that is very frustrating. Like, and obviously, right, he's playing the game the way he's supposed to play the game. But I played Masters before where I didn't have that feeling. Like, when you reach 2300, you're playing differently. You are taught something that's not true in the beginning of chess that you don't figure out until you hit 21, 22, 2300 and above. And what you're taught is that pieces have value. They don't. They're use value. Use value is different from actual value. No, it's a constructive fiction for children when they first start playing, for people when they first start playing. It is not a constructive fiction when you hit 2000 and above. You find that out the hard way when you're playing people who are 22, 23, 2400. Look, I said it to say, it is very frustrating when you are, and this is me at my best. Like, this is not like now, this is me at my best, where I'm like, God, man, because keep in mind, you are doing labor. It doesn't seem like it. You're looking at people at the board. They just seem like they're just staring at the board. You're doing labor. Your brain is going bananas. Like, you are paranoid. You are unsure. All of these things are taking place at the same time. And yet you got to move. You got to do something. But you know that you're a flawed human being and that what you can do, you can fuck up. You know that there are things that you can't see. You know that the guy has plans. He's trying to take your head off. And you know that you're playing in a tournament for prize money and that whatever move you make, it becomes reality. It's stuck there forever. Until the end of time, in every time frame, that move will be there because it's recorded. And somebody can look up the game and see the game that you played where you royally fucked up or you did something brilliant. It's very frustrating when you spend like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and you're just being snuffed out. Like any and everything that you're doing, it's just being snuffed up. I don't know. Yeah, it will be Tao, Macau Tao. Macau Tao. Easy. Easy, easy, easy. We have one more chat. And this is Play Tim Pool. Loser goes hatless for a year. I would fuck Tim Pool up. I would fuck him up. He would stand no chance. I am willing to have the game. We can play it on YouTube. We can play it for everybody to see. Chess.com. We can stream it. My channel, his channel. He would lose that game. He would lose that game. He would lose that game badly. He would lose the game badly. I don't even know if he plays chess. I don't even know if he plays chess. Don't even know if he plays. But I would love to see it. Look, man, I'm open. I just don't know who plays online. Like, I don't know who plays on the net. But Dr. Jacobs, she says, that would be smart. Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun. That would be fun. I would take up that challenge. I would take up that challenge. What is your favorite opening in the black? It depends on the game. Magnus Carlsen, he's okay, but he's not. He's not Kasparov. He's not Kasparov. Favorite opening for black? It kind of depends on the opening. I mean, I either play the Rui Lopez or King's Indian. It just kind of depends. I mean, you can see my games online. I play all the time. Play chess against Resurrector. From my understanding, he has like a 1900 game. He's supposed to be rather strong. But he's open. I'm open to it. I'm open to it. Definitely open to it. Yeah, definitely open to it. I would like to get back in tournaments. It just takes so much time. Like studying, keeping up with latest games, keeping up with latest theory, all this stuff just takes time. When I was younger, it was easy because, you know, it's like you're sitting in a hospital. You just have your chessboard with you. And so you have nothing else to do, right? And when you're in tournaments, it's different. It's like when you're in the flow of it, you're in the flow of it. So it's different. When you get out of the flow of it and trying to get back in the flow of it, it's not easy. It's not easy. I actually gets to play during interviews. That's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know how many play, though. That's the rub. Yeah, that's the rub. I don't know how many play. Yeah, that is the rub. In fact, I may play some chess today. Videos cut, though. All right, I'm going to end this because we're just talking shit. I'm going to say you guys can like. You can share. You can subscribe. Just as like anything, you have to play to be good. Yeah, you have to play. I learned by playing. I mean, God, man, I didn't even open a book until my rating was like 1900. I'm good at old USSR, play chess from the child. Yeah. Yeah. Hell, we have sayings every Russian schoolboy knows. Like, chess theory is when you have a Fianchetto bishop, let's say in a King's Indian attack or King's Indian defense, F5 is pushed or F4 is pushed. If E takes F, everything in you, everything in you is telling you, take back with the bishop or take back with another piece. And so they have sayings. Every Russian schoolboy knows that G takes F. G takes F. The reason for that is effectively you have the bishop on G, and the bishop is pretending like it's a pawn. And so the bishop, because it's defending and pretending like it's a pawn, it's better to couple the pawns together as opposed to isolating the pawn. This is theory behind it. All right. I am going to say like. I am going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. You can support this content. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, buy me a coffee. I think I said PayPal already. Memberships. All of those things help support the content. You have my deepest appreciation, my deepest thanks for even liking the video. All of those things help. I'm going to call this a day. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. I try to be accurate, so yeah, I put qualifications on it. I want you to just be a doormat. But be kind to the degree that you can be kind. And I will see you. Jamal ran from the fight. Hey, ran from the fight. What? 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 Ran from the fight. You guys have a good one. You all have a good one. And be safe. Ran from the fight.